Hey guys, and welcome to episode 41 of Who Cares? And this time we're reflecting on the second half of Doctor Who Series 1. Last time we reflected on the first half of Series 1 of the new series with Christopher Eccleston. So this time we're going to be reflecting on the rest of the five stories in this season. And then we're going to be sort of summing up our thoughts on Eccleston's era as the Doctor and giving you a ranking of all the stories individually, um, and the rating at the end. But yeah, series one, part two, we should go on to the next Doctor Who story, which is the Long Game, which because we did Dalek last time, we finished on that. Yeah, the Long Game. This is an interesting one. Before I hand it over to Alan, apparently Russell T Davies, he originally wrote the script in the 80s and he handed it into the Doctor Who team, sent it to them, and they rejected it first time round. And yeah, so when he became the producer in 2005, he decided to bring this script to screen. But yeah, it's an interesting one because Simon Pegg stars in this. He plays the editor on Satellite 5, which will sort of tie into the sort of the finale, the Bad Wolf stuff that's going on this season. But yeah, without any further ado, I will hand this over to Alan. Give us your thoughts on the Long Game.
Sure. By the way, before I start, I just want to say to the listeners, I know that this latest hangout has been a long time coming. I mean, we did the first half of the Eccleston era many months ago, but some of us got day jobs. Some of us, I guess Ollie and Jack in particular, have been going to school. Life sometimes gets in the way of YouTube, and that's why it's taken so long for us to get to the second half of Eccleston's era. But my apologies for that, but thank you for your patience. We finally got around to it. The Long Game. Yeah, this is a great Doctor Who story, in my opinion. This is one of my favorites from from Christopher Eccleston's one season as the Doctor. It's been a while since I've watched it, but what I recall this story is that it was a lot of fun. I mean, I like the idea of the Doctor and Rose going to this space station, or Satellite 5 as it's called. And by the way, if you hear any noise in the background of me talking, it's because there's a big storm outside my house. Keep your fingers crossed I don't lose internet. We'll see. But anyway, I like the idea of the Doctor and Rose going to a space station where you see all these colorful characters inhabiting the station, and they will also meet a very short-lived companion named Adam, played by Bruno Langley. He's so short-lived, he will only do one more story, and then the Doctor will give him the boot. No, this is the story where he gives Adam the boot. I'm sorry. You see, it has been a while. We first saw Adam in the previous story, Dalek, which is my all-time favorite Eccleston story, and one of my very favorite Doctor stories of all. I just love Dalek. That was the story where we met Adam. So this is the story where Adam gets the boot by the Doctor at the end because he does something really stupid, and I guess the Doctor chooses not to forgive him, and he just sends him home. But anyway, yeah. So Rose, the Doctor, and the short-lived companion Adam go to this space station, meet all these colorful characters, and I like the idea that there are various different levels in this space station, and everybody is trying to literally work their way up to the very top level of the space station, because that's considered being promoted in some way, and a better life for yourself in some way if you can somehow work your way up to the top level, the top floor, if you like, of this space station. And it turns out, yeah, there's some nasty shenanigans going on in regards to that top floor of the space station. We find out there's a nasty alien at the top floor called the Jagrafess, and his minion up there is a guy known as the Editor, and he's played by the one and only Simon Pegg, who you probably know from films like Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz is one of my all-time favorite comedies. I mean, that is a hysterically funny comedy. And it also features a supporting part by Timothy Dalton, former James Bond in that. If you haven't seen Hot Fuzz, you should. It's hysterically funny. And of course, you also know Simon Pegg as the latest incarnation of Scotty from the most recent Star Trek movies, although it's been a while since we've had a Star Trek movie. Hopefully that will change. And he gives a great performance. I mean, Simon Pegg, he always brings it. He is a great actor, very talented, very funny. And I think he was totally having the time of his life playing one of the main villains in this story. And I really enjoyed his performance here. He looks very much like he's got like albino white skin. I don't know if that has to do with the fact that he's been in this space station and with with the lighting very dark up there on that top floor, if that affected him, or if he's an alien. I don't think he's an alien, but the fact that he has like very white pigmentation of the skin here, so he looks kind of creepy, but his performance is quite good. I mean, he's quite excellent here as the editor who works for the main alien of the Jagrafess. As for the Jagrafess alien, yeah, I mean, I like the Jagrafess alien. He looks really creepy. Basically, it. We don't know, is it a he or a she? It looks pretty creepy. It's basically like this big blob that hangs up on the ceiling on the top floor of the station, and it has this big mouth with these horribly nasty, huge teeth. The only question I have about the Jagrafess, and it's probably one of my only criticisms of the story, is how the hell did it get into the space station in the first place? How did nobody notice it coming into the station? Does the top floor of the space station have a removable roof? And so it crawled into the open roof.
Yeah.
And the roof slammed shut. How did nobody know that this thing actually was up there in the station? How did it get in without nobody seeing it?
The thing is, like, didn't they grow it or something? Because they had to keep floor 500 really cold in order for the creature to survive. So presumably it was grown in a lab or something, or it was from it was from a planet somewhere. I think that's what the editor said. I can't remember, but yeah, it was a bit, because he's massive, isn't he?
He's huge. He's huge. Like he almost takes up like the whole ceiling. Well, not the whole ceiling, but a huge amount of the ceiling on the top floor. How did nobody know that he was there? How did it get in there in the first place? So
I just love that bit when the editor says, "I call him Max," and then Eccleston smiles and nods.
That is a good bit. Yeah. So that's fun. I like the colorful characters here. Let's see. You've got a couple of talented ladies in this show. Let's see. Let's see. Christine Adams plays Kathika. I think she's the black woman in the story. Kathika, who let's see. Yes, that is her. I'm looking at her right now on Wikipedia. Yep, that's her. Yeah, she's very good. She gives a very good supporting performance. I guess she's one of the employees at the station, and she helps the doctor. And she definitely plays a big role in helping to defeat the alien at the end. So she's quite good. Christine Adams as Kathika. I also found very appealing Anna Maxwell Martin as Suki, who we meet early on in the story. Although sadly she falls victim to the Jagrafess and the editor, which is kind of sad. But she was very appealing as Suki. I liked her. I like the whole atmosphere of the story. I like. I have to say, there's also this funny subplot with Adam. In fact, this is what gets him into trouble. That Adam gets a little in over his head about one certain thing. I mean, literally, but I'm dumb, because one thing he discovers on this station, that they discover on this station, is that if you want to boost your intelligence, I mean, again, it's been a while since I've seen the story, but if you want to boost your intelligence and you want to get all the information from the station's computer all in one go, you can have this surgery to have this chip implanted in your brain, and then you can interface, you can log on, if you like, directly with the station's master computer and get in all this information plugged directly into your brain. And there's this very funny bit where Adam decides to get the surgery to have this device put into his brain, and we get this really funny bit where all he has to do is snap his fingers, and the opening, his head like opens up. It's like we see this circle in his head, and we can actually like kind of see his brain through the little circle. It's actually pretty funny. I mean, it's not disgusting really. It's just, I mean, there's no blood, there's no goo, coming out of him. But I mean, like, this little circle opens up in his forehead, and we can kind of see his brain, and that's where you can interface with the computer. And I guess I also have to give it up to another talented lady in the cast, Tamsin Gregg, who plays the nurse who works in the medical office where Adam goes to get the surgery. And Tamsin Gregg, she's quite funny as the nurse who does the surgery on him. But of course, this gets him into trouble eventually with the doctor, because it allows Adam to get certain bits of future information or past information that he really should not have and could be dangerous to the people of Earth. And that's why the doctor chooses not to forgive him. And he basically gives Adam the boot at the end of the story by taking him back home and leaving him there. And Adam is stuck in his rut, having this device implanted in his head. And he has to be careful not to snap his fingers, because any snap of the fingers will open that device. I mean, if he wants to close the device, he just has to snap his fingers again. But he's going to be stuck with this problem for the rest of his life. If anybody near him snaps their fingers, the little device in his head will open up. But poor guy. But oh well, I guess he had it coming to him. Anyway, I'll wrap this up. I think it's a very enjoyable Doctor Who story. I mean, it's been one of my very favorite Eccleston stories since I first watched it. I think it's a lot of fun. I do think there are some other Eccleston stories in his one season that I think are better than The Long Game, but this one I think is really good. I like this one a lot. I think this is a very solid, very enjoyable Doctor Who story from Eccleston's era. I've always enjoyed The Long Game, so yeah, I like this one a lot. So I will give The Long Game a 9 out of 10.
Okay, thank you, Alan. And yeah, The Long Game. I guess I'll go for this one. I think it's a good story. I don't think it's an amazing Doctor Who story, if I'm being perfectly honest. I do think in my review I gave this, say, 8 out of 10. I'd probably bunk it down to a 7 out of 10 if I did the re-review, or maybe a low 8 out of 10. I think this is probably my least favorite of Series 1, but nonetheless, I've always enjoyed The Long Game. I think it's good. I think Russell T Davies does well with the script here. I think Eccleston, once again, as the Ninth Doctor, he's really solid. He's really good, in my opinion. There's some funny scenes in this story where you have Eccleston and Adam, and you can see that sort of, well, I guess you could say rivalry, because Eccleston's Doctor, he just doesn't like Adam. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting to have a companion that lasts only 2 stories. He's in Dalek and then he's in this one, and then that's it. We won't see him again as a companion. And I think that was intentional from what I heard. Russell T Davies said he wanted to write a companion that wouldn't make it in the TARDIS, someone who uses the information for his own ends, essentially. But I mean, I think Billy Piper's very good in this. I do think it's interesting how people in this story, they can snap their fingers.
Jack, are you there?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I do think it's interesting in this story how people can snap their fingers. Yeah, I do think it's interesting in this story how people can snap their fingers, and you can these spikes come out and you could see their brain. I think that's really interesting. And it's interesting as well because we see that Adam, he gets this done to himself so he can, get more information. That we see that people gather around, and all this information goes into their brain. What's interesting as well is the creature in this. I think you guys mentioned it. I've just looked up its name here. This is its full name: the mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Hadrajasic Maxarodonfoe, which is quite a mouthful. And it's funny because if you look at the outtakes of this episode, when Simon Pegg's trying to say the full name, he messed it up quite a bit, which is
Oh yes, he did. It took him several takes to get through that. Yeah, that was very funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Raxacorical Falbatorius. the name that Russell came up for the Slovene. I mean, he likes the sort of complicated names. But I mean, Simon Pegg, yeah, great actor. Like Alan said, Hot Fuzz, one of my favorite comedy films. Nick Frost is really good in that as well. And I mean, he's great in anything that I've seen him in. He's also really good in Paul, that Cornetto trilogy. He also did a comedy called Spaced, and he's also in Guest House Paradiso with Rick Meal, which is like a film version of Bottom, the comedy series that Rick Meal did. So yeah, I mean, he's a really great actor, Simon Pegg, and yeah, of course, he was Scotty in the new Star Trek films, in that new trilogy. But yeah, I mean, he's a welcome addition here as the editor. There's an interesting scene where this woman turns out she's working undercover, and of course, he shows the Jagrafess, and she gets killed. She gets zombified or something like that. And we see at the end of the story when the Jagrafess is killed, the zombified woman that he, the woman. Sorry, we see at the end of the story, of course, the woman from earlier who was zombified by the Jagrafess. She's holding on to the editor's leg so he can't get away. But yeah, I mean, the episode looks well visually. It's interesting how this story ties into the series 1 finale, with Satellite 5 and all that stuff there. There's some good practical effects in this. Like there's this corpse we see at one point, and like Alan said, when you get to floor 500, I think it is, that's meant to be, the holy place, I guess you could say. They say that it's made of gold up there and all this stuff, and we find out, of course, actually, that it's Jagrafess up there and it's all a lie. So, I mean, one thing I will say about the story, it is kind of relevant nowadays with the whole, fake news stuff, Alex Jones and, Donald Trump, the whole like misinformation thing that's going on nowadays.
Jagrafess is fake news.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I mean, I think it's relevant nowadays with this story of the whole like fake news thing that it's talking about. And yeah, the soundtrack's really good by Murray Gold. I think Eccleston, he's really great in this. I do like the ending of the story where Eccleston, he goes towards Adam, and he gets him in the TARDIS and he lands him back home, where his mother is. And I mean, it is kind of, I guess you could say, a bit of a dick move for the Doctor to just leave Adam like that. But at the same time, Adam kind of messed it up for himself. He was the one who betrayed the Doctor's trust. He wanted to get that information spike. So yeah, when he clicks his fingers, or anyone else clicks their fingers, that big thing opens up in his head, and you could see his brain and all that. And the effects there still work pretty well. That actor who plays Adam, he's also in Coronation Street, I believe. And yeah, he does a good job here. And I mean, Adam kind of reminds me a little bit of Adric, this kind of know-it-all, especially in the previous story, Dalek. So I'm kind of glad that he didn't join them on the rest of their adventures with the Doctor. And like I said, Russell wrote this to show that not every companion can make it with the Doctor. Like the Doctor says, "Oh, I've got Rose. I only take the best," which was quite nice. I think he also uses the psychic paper in this story. I could be wrong. This might be the first one where they use the psychic paper, which is pretty cool. It's like this thing the Doctor shows to people, and they see whatever they want. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But I quite like the psychic paper. And yeah, I mean, it's a good story overall. I mean, I don't think it's amazing. I do think parts of the story could be fleshed out a little bit more. The story itself, I think it's good, but it's definitely not one I would rush back to in series 1. Yep.
Sorry, just a question. Would you say that the Jagrafess and the editor's kind of plot or plan, whatever, lacks motivation? Like it's kind of like the climax of the story is a little rushed, I think.
Yeah, no, I was gonna get to that. Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I don't know what I mean, the editor. I mean, I do find it interesting how the Jaggerfest and all that are sort of like controlling humanity and things like that.
Not
But
controlling the media,
yeah,
the
yeah,
world.
yeah, controlling the media and they're sort of controlling humanity that way. So I thought that was interesting. But I mean, yeah, and I do think it's interesting as well when the doctor's there for Rose and he says, "Oh, you don't exist," no, shopping, like no shopping receipts, like no birth certificates, nothing. It's like you didn't even exist. And they find out that the doctor, um, is he is the TARDIS, and that's why, because he could travel through time. But yeah, I do think their motivation is a little bit unclear. Like, how is the Jaggerfest controlling humanity through the media? I mean, like the Jaggerfest, I really don't understand how it can control everything. It's just this giant mouth in a ceiling, and like Alan said, like where did it come from? It's like from some random planet, but we never find out where or when it's from and
I
what
feel
really.
like it was rushed. Like I don't know about you, like the fact that it's just this like blob of goo in the ceiling. It was like almost like an afterthought. It was like they thought of the editor, and then they're like, oh no, we've got to have some alien antagonist. I don't know. I don't feel like it was Russell's best effort, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. But it's not
Yeah,
it's not a bad story. It's good, but I feel like the third act is where it kind of falls apart, if that makes sense.
no, I do agree with you there, and I think that's the reason why it's probably my least favorite of series one. I know Ollie would probably say End of the World is slightly worse, but I think I prefer that because I thought the story was a bit more consistent here. The third act does kind of let it down. And Simon Pegg, like I said, he's good as the editor, and he was a big Doctor Who fan. I mean, it's funny. I think he's one of the only actors who's been in Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, I think the third act kind of lets it down, and the Jaggerfest isn't the greatest monster or villain in the world. It's just this giant mouth on a ceiling, and yeah, the ending of the story does feel a bit slapdash. But I do like
Yeah,
I do like the final moments where um Adam's mother comes in and she's like, "Oh, you're finally here. Time just went by like that." And then she sees that his forehead opens, and that's sort of the conclusion of the story. I thought that was pretty good. So, um in conclusion, I think that the long game, it's a good Doctor Who story. I think I was being a bit generous giving it an 8 out of 10. I probably would have given it a 7 out of 10 if I was doing the review now. But I mean, I gave it 8 out of 10 in my review, so I'll probably just stick with the 8, but it's a low 8. It's just barely an 8 out of 10 for me. It's a good Doctor Who story, but it's not one that I would rush back to anytime soon. I mean, you got good performances from Eccleston and the rest of the cast, Billy Piper and all that. And I like the fact that Adam didn't work out as companion in the end. And there's some really good ideas in there, but I can kind of see why the Doctor Who script writers in the 80s rejected this story initially, because I don't think it's that great of a story. And I don't think Russell would admit to this being one of his best stories either. I mean, I could see why they rejected this initially in the 80s when he handed it in to the Doctor Who team. He sent it to them, and I think they sent it back and they said, you should focus on writing other things like real life dramas and stuff. And then later on, when he became producer of the new series, he decided, oh, well, I'm going to, you know, use this story anyway for series one. And I can kind of see why they rejected it. I mean, because I don't think it's that great, but I don't think it's awful either. I've seen some people who say like this is a terrible Doctor Who story and the worst of series one. I mean, I don't think it's that bad. It does have good things in there. I think it's good ideas but kind of wasted potential. But nonetheless, I mean, it's still a good story. It's not awful. It's not offensively bad or anything. I don't really think there is a bad story in Eccleston's first series, well, his only series. So I'm going to close off by giving the long game a 8 out of 10. So yeah, now we'll hand it over to Ollie. Give us your thoughts on the long game.
cheers, guys. Thankfully, I managed to have enough time to eat my dinner, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Also, to the viewers, I apologize. I've been getting over a cold, so I might sound a little different, or I may have to cough a little bit. But please just bear with me. Um, the long game, yes. Ooh, it's been a while since we did the first part of this hangout, and it's been a while since I saw this episode. But I remember most of it, and I'm kind of more with Jack on this one. I do like this story. I thought it was decent. It's entertaining, and for me, it is slightly better than The End of the World. But I do feel like it's not one of Russell's best scripts. It is a little bit rushed, I think, and it definitely needed more fleshing out. It feels a bit crammed, and I feel that maybe they could have had this as one of the two-part stories, or rewritten it to sort of make it flow better. I feel like there's a lot juggling in this story. The whole story seems to revolve around the manipulation of the media and how people take in the information within the media and people's kind of lust for information. So there's a great, baseline of a story there. But it's not, it's sadly let down by the third act. I feel like the episode made a mistake, and the mistake was focusing too much on Adam. Now, don't get me wrong. I get why Adam is in the story. He is there to serve the purpose that not every companion is right for the TARDIS, and he served that purpose. But all of the pointless meandering of him going round and getting his chip done, and like, do we really need to see all that? Like, okay, the chip getting done, yes, we needed to see that, but all the stuff before, like, that could have all been cut. Honestly, like, the pace of this story, it's kind of slow in the first half, and I really don't feel like I could engage with Adam as a character. And I know I'm not really supposed to like him because he is supposed to make mistakes. Um, but at the same time, I feel like the Doctor and Rose kind of got sidelined in their own story, which was a little bit of a shame, to be honest. And I couldn't buy into the whole mystery surrounding Floor 500 because the episode was trying to juggle Adam as well, and I don't know. I think it was just cramming too much in. But
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I was going to say I didn't really mention that when I was talking about it, but I do agree with you. I mean, like, what did Rose do in this story? She barely had any dialogue or anything to do, and yeah, I do think they kind of sidelined them to focus on Adam, which is kind of a shame.
yeah, no, I'm glad we agreed. Like, I did like the supporting cast. Kathika being the standout one. The actress, funny enough, looks a bit like Lashana Lynch, but I think it is somebody else though. She's good, and I like the sort of sacrifice she makes. Well, I don't know if it's sacrifice, but she manages to stop the Jagrafest by, I guess, transmitting loads of information. It's very slapdash, like Jack said. It's quite rushed. It's kind of hard to follow the climax and the plans for the editor and the Jagrafest. But I liked the sort of build up to Floor 500. I thought that was good with the character of Suki, how she was like an agent going undercover, trying to find out information about Floor 500 and all of that. And also, what's interesting is that what the Doctor does in this story affects the finale. So that was a nice sort of tie-in. And Eccleston is good. He's charming as ever in this story, and Billy Piper's good as well. But yeah, as I said, they don't really get much to do until the second half, and then they're captured. So what did they really do in the story overall? I feel like it was kind of the Adam show, which was, again, I get why Adam was in it, but for the amount of time he was in it, for me, it makes the story kind of boring. But the story isn't exactly redundant because it does have really good ideas, and it does set up the finale. And I happen to think that Satellite 5 is a fantastic location. The set looks really good, and I like the world that they've created. This kind of space station is almost something quite reminiscent of Star Trek, which I always thought was good. But the story itself, it's kind of a mishmash when you think about it. It's a little bit messy. Russell kind of wrote this one in a rush. I mean, the Jagrafest, it's a cool idea, but what does he do in the story? Like, what is his grand plan? Like, he wants to basically have the world's information. I'm guessing, like, wants to take control of the world's media. Excuse me. So I thought that was a little unclear, and I thought the editor could have been a bit fleshed out more. I mean, Simon Pegg, great actor. Nice to see him play a more serious role, but it's not much of a role, really, when you boil it down to it. But the episode's strengths are that it is entertaining, and it does have some good comedy, I think. Certainly with the three of them arriving on Satellite 5, that sort of opening section is quite fun, and Eccleston is his usual charming self. And I think the build up to the finale works. It's just the finale kind of falls apart, which is a real shame. And also, speaking of Simon Pegg, yes, Hot Fuzz, I agree. It is hysterical. I love that film, and I agree. It is hysterically funny. We'll have to do a reflection on those films one day. And also Murray Gold's music, you can't go wrong with that. Good score, but it isn't one of the best of the series. It is one of the lower tiered ones, sadly, and I can see why people rate it as the worst. Although I do like the ending where Adam returns home and his mum sees him, and then he has to live with the chip inside his head, and then when she clicks her fingers and says, "Time goes by like that," and then her reaction just says it all. That's brilliant. But I like the fact that the Doctor, he doesn't take everyone. He only takes the people he feels that he can trust and he feels that are going to benefit him. Adam is useless. Adam is greedy. And that was what cost him. Well, his face, his head being opened. So there we are. Yeah. So the long game. It's a bit of a rough one, unfortunately, but it's not without merit. But I don't feel like it's one of the Eccleston stories that people hold in such high regard. So yeah, I will sort of close up by giving this one a 7 out of 10. Like, it's decent enough, it's watchable, it's enjoyable, but it could have been a lot better in many areas. But yeah, that's my verdict.
In the words of David Tennant, it could have been more. It could have been so much more. Yeah. Anyway, on to the next story in this season, and we're going to go back to Alan on this one. Sorry, just 1 second here. Yeah, the next one is The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances.
Oh no, it isn't. It's Father's Day.
Father's Day.
Father's Day, you're right,
Father's Day.
Trust me on this.
Anyway, yeah, so the next story is Father's Day, which is an interesting story because we focus more on Rose's backstory in this and how she lost her dad. So I'll pass it over to Alan. Give us your thoughts on Father's Day.
Father's Day, yeah. Father's Day, this is the one where the Doctor takes Rose back in time to meet her late father, obviously before he died, although he warns Rose not to try to meet him. I guess what the Doctor is allowing Rose to do is to see her father, but I think he warns her not to try to meet him because sadly, Rose's father died in a car accident when she was just a baby. And, obviously the Doctor doesn't want Rose to mess up that particular timeline. So he says, okay, I can take you back in time to see your father, but, don't try to meet him. So he winds up taking her on the day that I guess they got married. Her parents got married. I guess.
And I think it was her parents' friends that got married.
Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Again, it's been a while since I've seen the story. Yes. Yeah. Her parents were attending the wedding of a friend, and it was at this on this day, and sadly, that her father was killed in a car accident. I guess he was crossing the street, and a runaway car hit him. It was a hit and run accident. The Doctor manages to take Rose to this day where she gets to see him, but he warns her not to interfere. But of course, Rose can't help it, and she winds up racing out into the street and pushing her pushing her father out of the way of the incoming car. I mean, Rose gets out of the way in time herself, so she saves her father, but by saving her father, she's now altered the timeline. And this is where the story the plot gets a little screwy to me, because apparently by doing this, it opens up, I guess, a hole in time, and we get these again, forgive me, it's been a while since I've seen this story. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page to help me, but we get these winged creatures called the Reapers, who come from out of nowhere, but apparently they're time sensitive. And the thing I don't understand about the Reapers is that these winged creatures, they kind of look like they're like a combination of bat and dragon, and that they try to any if there's any irregularities in time, they try to fix it, but the way they try to fix it is like causing destruction, and they're killing people. And the Reapers, I don't fully understand the concept of the Reapers. I mean, they look cool. The CGI animation on them is fine, but I don't really understand why they even exist in the first place, and why all they want to do is kill people when they're apparently their very existence has to do with them being time sensitive and wanting to fix irregularities or things that are wrong in time. I don't understand that. I don't understand that concept.
My only assumption is potentially that Rose may have created them because of what she did. Maybe these creatures are, they just came into being because of Rose's error, because she changed time. Because once they fix everything, the Reapers just disappear. So I'm guessing like their lifespan was connected to what Rose did. So I guess
that's possible.
Yeah,
that's possible.
That's my understanding of it. But I get it. It is confusing.
Yeah, I don't think they made that clear in this story. I mean, you're probably right. That may be the reason why, but I just don't think it was made clear. So,
sorry to interrupt as well. That is the reason why. And apparently, if you're wondering why, like the Reapers didn't appear during the classic series, they do explain that the Time Lords, because the Time Lords were around. I think the Doctor even says in this story that when the Time Lords were around, they could prevent the Reapers from appearing. But once the Time Lords, of course, disappeared, which they did after the Time War, that's why the Reapers are popping up everywhere. But yeah, sorry.
Okay. I mean, that could be an explanation as well. I mean, those are two very strong possibilities from both of you, but I just don't think it was made clear in this story. So that was a bit confusing. But anyway, once this happens, I mean, the Doctor has to try to come up with a way to save everybody and get rid of the Reapers and fix the mistake that Rose made. And basically, he gets everybody who hasn't been killed by a Reaper yet. He rounds them all up into the church, and they're all barricaded inside the church. Although the Doctor can only hold them off for a limited time. They also do throw in this really interesting plot twist that there's one bit, I think, where the Doctor tries to get back to his TARDIS to get some important device or something that he needs, and he goes back to the TARDIS. He opens up the door, and the TARDIS is completely hollowed out. It just looks like the inside of a regular police box. The inner dimension of the TARDIS is gone, completely gone. So I guess you could say the TARDIS, which looks like a police box, has been replaced now with a real police box, and the Doctor's TARDIS is gone. Although later on in the story, he finds a way of bringing it back because of the TARDIS key that he still has, and he notices the TARDIS key is glowing. So there's still a connection that the Doctor has between himself and the TARDIS, and he has a way of bringing back the TARDIS. But this is a real complicated situation, and it's a very dramatic Doctor Who story. The only real visual effects you see in this story are the Reapers, which are done through CGI animation, of course. But otherwise, it's a very dramatic Doctor Who story. But it does give a chance for Rose to get to know her father, Pete, played by Sean Dingwall. And I have to admit, this is a great story for Billie Piper as Rose. I mean, she really gets to strut her stuff as an actress in this one.
Would you say it's her best performance of all the stories she's in? I think it is.
Yeah. This is probably one of the stories where she really gets to show her range as an actress and all the serious stuff she gets to do in this one. And I thought she gives an excellent performance in this. I mean, she's one of the reasons to watch it. And of course, Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor is wonderful as well. I mean, charming, brave. I mean, there's one part where he gets angry at Rose for making this mistake and causing this problem, but later on, he forgives her and they have a nice embrace. And he flashes that nice toothy grin of his, which reminds me of Tom Baker. It's a great performance from Eccleston in here. I like him in this. Don't touch the baby. Oh, that's another thing. Yeah, we see Rose as a baby. So that's another issue is that Rose's parents at this point in time, they've just had Rose, and so Rose sees herself as a little baby, although the Doctor warns her, don't touch the baby. So that's another thing that's happening in this story. Her mother, Jackie, played by Camille Coduri, she doesn't know yet that this grown-up young blonde woman is her daughter Rose, all grown up. So that's another thing that she's trying to keep from her mom in this story. But as time goes on, as the story goes on, I mean, initially Rose is not trying to let her father know that I'm your daughter, all grown up, but eventually he does figure it out. Pete Tyler, he eventually figures out that yes, this is my daughter, all grown up, and they have a really wonderful embrace and great acting together. I like Pete Tyler very much. Sean Dingwall is the actor. Pete Tyler is the character, Rose's father. I like Sean Dingwall a lot as Rose's dad, Pete, because apparently he wasn't the greatest of fathers. And as we see in the story, Rose's parents didn't have the greatest of relationships. They may have been on the verge of divorce at the time that her father died. But we get to see in this story that Rose's father, he gets to have a second chance with Rose, if only for a limited time. And then later on in the story, something terrible, even more terrible happens. That it appears that the Doctor is killed. That the Reapers kill the Doctor, or so it seems. And so now, what are they going to do? And eventually, Rose's dad, Pete, realizes that what has to happen is that he has to die, because he does figure out by talking with Rose that he was meant to die. He was meant to be hit by that car, and that's the only thing that's going to fix this problem and put everything right, is that he has to go back out there on that street and he has to allow himself to be hit by that car, which is terrible. That's absolutely terrible. But that the fact of the matter is everybody's lives are in danger, and the planet Earth is in danger unless he sacrifices himself. There is no other option. He has to do it. I mean, just imagine having to be put into that position. But he decides that he has to do it. It's the only way to set everything right. So he has a wonderful farewell scene with Rose, and she's crying, but he has to do this, and she knows that he has to do this. And I think he also says goodbye to Jackie, I think. Again, it's been a while since I've seen the story. And yeah, he goes out there and he allows himself to be hit by the car, because the car is in this time loop. It's constantly going around and around the block in this time loop. It keeps popping up every so often, going around the block in a time loop. So yeah, he goes out there into the street, the car comes around again, and yeah, he gets hit by the car and dies. But that fixes everything, and the Doctor comes back, and the Reapers go away, and that's it. But it's a very powerful story, and clearly it's an event that changes Rose. I mean, how can it not? And by the way, we haven't seen the last of Pete Tyler, because we will see Pete Tyler, a second Pete Tyler from an alternate universe in an upcoming story, which we'll talk about later. The final story, I believe, Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways. So we haven't seen the last of Rose's dad. But yeah, Sean Dingwall, I thought he was great as Rose's dad. Camille Coterie, very funny, and solid as Rose's mom, Jackie. Again, fabulous performance from Billie Piper in this as Rose, and Christopher Eccleston, great as always as the Doctor. But yeah, it is a very dramatic story. Not so much on the sci-fi in the story, apart from the appearance of the Reapers. But what stops this story from being perfect for me, again, I don't fully understand the concept of the Reapers, even though both Ollie and Jack have given me some good possibilities of how and why the Reapers exist. But it just wasn't made clear in this story why they're there. So that's one issue I have with the story. Also, the fact that it is a very inward kind of Doctor Who story, very dramatic, not so much elements of sci-fi in it apart from the Reapers. It's a very dark kind of story if you think about it, but it is very powerful. I have to admit, this is a very powerful story. Not your typical kind of Doctor Who story. I have to admit, I think there are some stories that I find more entertaining than this one, because this particular story is so serious, very serious. Ollie and Jack will probably disagree with me on this, but I actually find The Long Game a little bit more entertaining than this one, because again, Father's Day is just so serious. But I still think this is a great story on its own, and it's still very powerful. So to conclude, I like Father's Day a lot. It's a very powerful story, and again, this is a great story for Billie Piper as Rose. Great performance from her in this. Eccleston, solid as well. And I do like the dynamic there between Rose and her dad, Pete. And I like Sean Dingwall as Pete, Camille Coterie as Jackie. And, it is a powerful story. But I do think there are a few other stories in Eccleston's era that are a little more entertaining for me than this one. But this is still a good, powerful Doctor Who story. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I will still give Father's Day a very solid 8 out of 10.
All right, thank you, Alan. And Father's Day. I think this is a great Doctor Who story. Definitely a big step up over The Long Game, which I thought was good, but could have been better. What I really like about Father's Day is that it's an emotional story. It's quite a deep story, and it goes into Rose's backstory a lot more. You find out the reason why she traveled with the Doctor in the first place. You find out more about her family. And that's one thing I will say that I really like about Series 1 and the story and the Russell T Davies era in general is that even though I love the classic series, I guess you could say one criticism of that is we never really got to see the family lives of the companions. I mean, I guess, the only one we did see more of their backstory was Ace, but that was the last season of the classic series. And I guess you get to see Tegan's aunt in the Globalist, but that was really it. We never really saw any of the companions, family or relatives, and see how that impacted them going on traveling together and stuff like that. But I mean, I think the way the story begins is really good. I really love the beginning with Camille Coterie as Jackie, and she's talking about Pete Tyler, and we see that she says that he was killed by a hit and run driver. He never found out who it was. And then we see that it cuts to a photo of Pete Tyler. And then we get into the story properly. And we see that Rose is talking to the Doctor, and she says she wants to go back to 1987 and she wants to see her dad. And the Doctor's kind of perplexed by this. He's like, "Oh, you never mentioned this before." So I like the fact that this story is basically Rose sort of dealing with the loss of her dad, and how she sort of processed that, and how she still misses him, and sort of grieving over his death. I mean, she never knew her dad, which is sad, but she wishes she could, and because the Doctor's got a time machine, she thinks that she can change that. So it's interesting because we see the Doctor and Rose are there, and she looks away when Pete Tyler gets run over. We see he gets out of his car, and then obviously doesn't hear the car behind him, which hits him, and then drives on. And then we see that the doctor's with Rose, and he says we can try one more time, but it's going to be difficult because there's going to be two versions of us there. So we see that Rose, she's there at the doctor this time, and she runs to save her father's life. She manages to get Pete Tyler out of the way, and he survives. He doesn't get killed. And I really like Eccleston here. I think this is one of Eccleston's best performances because you see the rage, and he's really angry with Rose because Rose tricked him and Rose lied to him. And the doctor's essentially saying in the story that the whole world's different because he's alive, and there's ramifications for what she's done because she's changed time when it wasn't supposed to be changed. That's a fixed point in time that can't be changed. And if you start fiddling around with the past, then it's going to have consequences for the future. And I do think that Billie Piper is really good here as Rose. This is probably her best performance so far, I think, because she's given a more emotional story. I think the script here is really good by Paul Cornell, I think it is. He does a really good job here with the script, and I think it's one of the best stories in Doctor Who series one because it's dealing with that emotional storyline with Rose's father, and it's nice that they've set this back in 1987, which at the time would have been when Sylvester McCoy was a doctor. But I do like Christopher Eccleston's line. He's like, "Oh, the past is a different country." In 1987, it's just the Isle of Wight, which was pretty funny. I mean, Russell, he's great with the dialogue, and Paul Cornell, he's doing a really good job here with the script. And I think Eccleston, he's just, great in this story. Like when he's talking to Rose, that we see that they go to Pete Tyler's apartment, and she says, "Oh, soft drinks and all this stuff." He was a businessman. He was great. And then the doctor basically, he's got this look on his face, like he's so pissed off, and he just says, "Oh, I told you that the TARDIS had traveled in space. Then I said time machine." And the doctor, he catches on to the fact that the reason why Rose wanted to join the TARDIS in the first place was probably one of the reasons was because she could go back in time and prevent her dad from being killed. And I think Eccleston's great there. I mean, I love that line where he says, "Oh, I did it again. I picked another stupid ape." That was great. I think that was a very funny line. And you can tell the doctor, he's really annoyed. And Rose says, "Oh, but what's the issue? It's not like he's going to cause World War III or anything." And the doctor basically says, "Well, it doesn't matter because the whole world's different because he's alive. It may be inconsequential when it comes to other events, but because you've changed this event, because you've gone back in time and you've changed this event, it's screwed up the whole timeline because you're not letting history take its course." And I think that's great. And I really like the conflict between Eccleston and Billie Piper as Rose in this, where he says, "Can you give me," he says, "Give me the TARDIS key." And she says, "Fine." And then she says, she basically says to him, "Oh, you'll come back. I'm not going to wait around for you." And she makes it clear to the doctor that, she thinks the doctor's being childish. But I think the doctor, he's got a point because, it's interesting this comes after the long game, because in the long game, that was all about Adam mucking it up. And then Rose kind of mucks it up here. And I suppose, the doctor forgives Rose because he realizes that she's better than this. But at the same time, you can kind of understand where the doctor's coming from. And maybe Rose is a bit of a stupid ape. But nonetheless, I think Eccleston's great. He asks for the TARDIS key back, and then he goes to the TARDIS, and then we see that he opens up the TARDIS, and like Alan said, it's just a regular phone box. The TARDIS is gone, and I really like the Reapers in this. I think the Reapers are really cool Doctor Who monsters. we see throughout the story, you've got the vision of the Reapers, and it's all in red. And it's nice to see a young Mickey Smith in this as well, like Mickey Smith as a kid. I think that's well done. And I think the story itself is just pretty well paced, and there's some great moments. I really do think that the actor who plays Rose's father, Sean Dingwall, I think he's really good in this. Sorry, Dingwall. He's really good here as Pete Tyler. There's some funny dialogue where he's talking to Rose and he says, oh, if I wasn't married with Jackie, and she's like, don't even go there, just don't go there, because he's going to say that Rose is attractive. And we see that it's interesting how the timeline's messed up in this, because there's an interesting moment in this where there's this guy with a mobile phone back then in the late 80s, when phones had just started. They had these big, massive brick type phones. And they keep playing the first recording, Watson, come here, I need you, Alexander Graham Bell. And it's quite funny when you got Eccleston saying, oh, that's the very first phone call, Alexander Graham Bell. So that was funny. And I do think all the stuff in the church is really good. The Doctor says, the older a building is, the securer it's going to be, and the safer it's going to be. And what's interesting as well is that we see that Jackie and Pete Tyler really don't have a good relationship in this. Like Alan was saying, Rose's dad, I wouldn't necessarily say that he's a failure as a dad. I think he's trying his best, but he's got all these sort of dodgy deals going on. He's kind of a bit like Del Boy. I think Rose says that. And he's got these sort of dodgy business deals going and all that stuff. But it's kind of, watching it, it's kind of sad to see how nasty Jackie is to Rose's dad, where she's like, oh, he's a born failure, that one. And, we see that Rose is with Pete Tyler, and Jackie assumes that Rose is Pete Tyler's mistress or something like that. So Jackie's quite mean and scathing in this, we see in the past. And it is nice at the start of the story where they go to see them getting married. That was nice. But obviously it's a marriage that is on a massive breakdown. And it's just a shame to see that, because I do think Rose's dad, he's trying his best, but obviously Jackie just thinks that he's not good enough for her. And I think maybe that's the reason why, at the start of the story where she's talking to Rose about her dad, she feels bad about him because she didn't treat him that well, and then he got run over by a car. But nonetheless, all the stuff in the church is quite good. I have seen somebody complain. Someone made a stupid criticism that, Camille Codry, like, she should look like she did when she was doing Nuns on the Run, which came out in 1990. Like, she should look a lot younger than she does. And I guess, you could make that complaint that she kind of looks the same in 1987 as she does in 2005. But this is 2005. This is before, the de-aging software with films like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and The Irishman and, Captain Marvel. I don't think the BBC could have afforded to de-age Camille Codry as Jackie in this. Maybe you could have got. Maybe they could have got a younger actress to play Jackie. Maybe that would have worked out better. But nonetheless, I think she's good in this. And there's some funny dialogue. I love the bit where Eccleston, as the Doctor, says, "I've been waiting ages to say this. Jackie Tyler, go and check the door." That was really funny. And what's kind of shocking about this as well is we see the Doctor gets swallowed up by a Reaper at one point. We see the Doctor, he's with Rose, and we see that Rose is there with the baby. And I do like that line for the Doctor's with Rose. He says, "Now, Rose, you're not going to destroy the world, are you?" Or something like that. That was quite funny. And then we see that afterwards that Pete Tyler, he starts to put the pieces together, and he realizes that Rose is his daughter from the future. And we see that he's talking to Jackie, and he says, "Oh, can't you see that they're the same?" And we see that Jackie gets really annoyed because she thinks that Rose is named after the mistress, Rose, because of course she thinks that Rose is Pete Tyler's mistress. So she's like, "Oh, why did you name our baby after her?" And he says, "Oh, don't you realize that it's the same Rose from the future?" And the doctor says you can't touch yourself because it would cause a paradox. So we see that Pete Tyler, he passes the baby over to Rose, and then a Reaper gets into the church and it eats the doctor, which is kind of shocking. I mean, the fact that the doctor, for most of the story, he's not in it. Like for half the story, he's gone because this Reaper manages to get in through the paradox and eats the doctor. And then afterwards, we see that they're trying to come up with a plan, and we see that there's this like time loop, or as they said in the Goblet, in Meglos, a chronic hysteresis. We see that this car's going around in a loop, and Pete Tyler, he sort of puts two and two together, and he realizes that he's meant to die. He was meant to die. The car was meant to hit him, and so I mean, I really like the last moments between Pete and Rose, where we see that they're talking to each other, and she says, "I love you," and he says, "Oh, all that stuff you said about me going for picnics and all that stuff. I know it's a lie." And he realizes that she wanted to bring him back. And what's kind of tragic is that the doctor could have solved this problem. He could have kept Pete alive if it wasn't for the fact that Rose touched the baby, which caused a paradox. Like we see that at one point he's got the TARDIS key and the TARDIS is reassembling itself. But yeah, so we see that Pete Tyler, he throws himself in front of the car and events change. And we see this time, instead of the guy driving off in the car, he gets out of the car. And we see that Jackie's talking about this woman who went to comfort him in his final moments. And of course, we find out that that is Rose from the future. He went back in time. So that was really nice. I mean, the fact is, I mean, even though he died, at least he didn't, die in his final moments alone. And Rose was there to comfort him. And we see that the doctor, he takes back Rose at the end. And I think the ending of the story is really good, where we see that the doctor, he's kind of, made his peace with Rose. And we see that Rose, she lets it go. She realizes that, that messing up time like this, it has its consequences. And I think it really is a great story. I think it's beautifully written by Paul Cornell. I think the writing here is just superb. There's some funny moments in there as well. I really like the setting. I mean, it's a basic story if you think about it. The whole Pete dying and then the Reapers. It basically causes paradox, and the doctor's got to solve it. I mean, it's a bit of a basic story, but it does work, I think, and I do like the Reapers. It's a shame that the Reapers never came back, but I do think they work for the story. And of course, I think the doctor says in the story the reason why the Reapers are around is because of all the paradoxes, and the Time Lords are no longer there. In the past, if there's a paradox, the Time Lords would have gotten rid of the Reapers. They wouldn't have appeared. But we see, of course, this is after the Time War, so Time Lords are no longer around to sort this stuff out. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a great story. I really like the setting. The acting is really good by Billy Piper, Christopher Eccleston, and of course Camille Codry. She's very good in this story as well, as is Sean Dingwall as Pete Tyler. And this isn't the last time you're going to see Pete Tyler. A parallel universe version of him will return to the show in the next series. So it's not the last time we're going to see the character of Pete Tyler, but it's a great emotional story. Like I said, the soundtrack, the setting, everything about it. It's a very emotional story, and it's definitely, I think, one of the best stories of Series 1, and probably Rose's best story of our entire time in Doctor Who, I think. So, I mean, I really have no flaws with the story, so I'm going to close off by giving Father's Day a 10 out of 10. So, yeah. And now I'll pass it over to Ollie. Give us your thoughts on Father's Day.
Father's Day, or Planet of the Stupid Apes. So, excuse me. Right, Father's Day. Well, I love this one. Father's Day is a fantastic story. I really like it, and I think it's a very unorthodox Doctor Who story in the and I use that as a compliment because to the episode's credit, this is a powerful, beautifully written drama. I mean, the word drama has never really been more impactful for a Doctor Who episode. I mean, the fact that it does center around Rose and her father, and the idea that Rose wants to go back to save her father and get to know him, which is a really good concept, and it kind of just shows the range that this show can cover. Like the Doctor can pretty much do anything. Obviously, there are laws, and Rose breaks those laws. But I like the idea that she really tests the Doctor, and he allows her to indulge in it, just so he can prove her wrong, just so he can say, there are laws in which you can't disobey. I mean, he does say to her, "Be careful what you wish for." So he kind of had a feeling this was coming. Yeah, but at the same time, he's not gonna like turn her down to see her dad. But Rose obviously didn't realize the extent of the laws of time. Excuse me, I do apologize.
Sorry to interrupt. And yeah, you're right. I mean, even the first Doctor says it in the Aztecs to Barbara. You can't rewrite history, not one line. So I guess Rose didn't learn that lesson yet.
No, but you can rewrite the script more than one line. But no, yeah, this is Billie Piper's best performance, like ever in Doctor Who. Yes, Rose has always been mocked for the amount of time she's been crying in the show, but this is one of the episodes where it's warranted because the extent of the emotional drama is powerful. I mean, this episode nearly had me in tears. It was that powerful. The father and daughter scenes with her and Sean Dingwell, who plays Pete, are really, really good and really genuinely beautiful. I mean, I could see that Russell was passionate about this character, and Rose is the audience character, and we have been following her since the beginning. So we know a little bit about her backstory, and we know that her dad had died before it was mentioned, but now we get to see him. It kind of changes the whole perspective. It adds a new layer to her character, and obviously knowing that, fuck's sake, sorry, knowing that her mum and dad weren't in a good place when he died was also tragic. But I think what's kind of interesting about this story is the way that Rose chooses to save him, and then the Reapers come in. If there's any shortcomings of the stories, perhaps the Reapers are potentially a little underdeveloped. We could have probably had a little bit more clarity on the Reapers. I can agree with Alan on that, but I think the episode gets away with it because of how emotional it is. And Murray Gold's music is beautiful for this story. Really, really beautiful stuff. Very sad, very moving, very powerful. But I also like the fact that Eccleston got to play the Doctor in multiple facades. He got to sort of play the Doctor fun and also serious. Like the scene where he calls Rose a stupid ape, and then he's like, "Fine, give me the TARDIS key, and I'm gonna leave." And then he can't leave. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. This is not really a good night for me to do this. And then, yeah, what was I going to say? Yeah, then we see him tell off Jackie, which is one of my favorite moments when he says, "Jackie Tyler, go and check the door." Yes, sir. I should have done that ages ago. Eccleston's he's having fun with the role now. He's really he's settled in. Although there's that really bizarre scene where they actually kill him off halfway through the story. The Reapers devour the Doctor, and it's like, what? Yeah, that's a bit of a shock. I mean, some people may see that as a criticism, the fact that Eccleston is sidelined in this story, but the story's not really about him. It is about Rose. and I can forgive the episode for that, because it is more about the emotion and about the drama. And the ending of this story is heartbreaking when, Rose, manages. Well, Pete realizes Rose is his daughter from the future, and he's going to do the right thing, and he's going to die when he was supposed to die. And God, it's utterly heartbreaking to see Rose watch her dad die, after getting to know him, for a while. And yeah, it's really beautiful stuff. And we also see that scene. I don't know if you guys talked about it, where Jackie is talking to young Rose, and she's telling her about her dad, which is also very sad and very moving. And then at the end of the episode, we see that scene again, and then the story's changed, and she's like, "Oh, but there was also a young girl there who was who was there. Nobody knew who she was, and all of that." So that was kind of a nice little tie-in. Yeah, it's not the best of the series. Again, I think because the Reapers needed a little bit more development. I mean, their design is great, but in terms of like their purpose, it is a little unclear. But again, the episode gets away with it. So yeah, Father's Day is a beautiful episode and very well written. It's a classic, and it's one of the most emotional Doctor Who episodes ever written. So they should be very proud of that. I'm going to move on because my voice is really struggling. So I'm going to give this one an easy 10 out of 10, and I'm going to pass back to Alan for the next one.
Thanks, Ollie. And yeah, okay, so we come on to the next story in this series, and it's another two-part story, The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. So, Alan, give us your thoughts on The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances.
All right. Yeah, this is a two-part story comprising 2 episodes, but they form one single episode, so we have to take these 2 episodes together. Yes, The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances. And all I can say is it's a classic. It's brilliant. It's this is my second favorite of Christopher Eccleston's stories. My second favorite, second only to Dalek.
Are you my mummy?
Yeah, Are You My Mummy? Yeah, this is the 2-part story with the famous line, "Are you my mummy?" Where the Doctor and Rose go to I guess it's World War II, the time of World War II, London during the Blitz, as it says here in Wikipedia. And this is also the story that introduces a very popular Doctor Who companion, Captain Jack Harkness, played by John Barrowman, who has proven himself to be one of the most popular characters from the new Doctor Who series, and he will be back. He is still very much a recurring Doctor Who character. I think he even appeared during Jodie Whittaker's time for one episode. So the Doctor Who fans, they like Captain Jack. I like Captain Jack, played by John Barrowman, and yeah, he will be back. You haven't seen the last of Captain Jack, but yeah, this is the story that introduces him. And yeah, let's see. Again, it's been a while since I've watched this one, but this is indeed a very memorable Doctor Who story. And I think it also won an award, like a British television award of some sort, and very deservedly so. Because let's see, they discover. Let's see. Okay, again, I have to read the plot on Wikipedia, but yeah, apparently the Doctor and Rose notice that there's a metal cylinder flying through space, flying through time and space, and it's heading towards London. And this metal cylinder, it crashes down in London, 1941. So the Doctor and Rose follow it down to Earth. It's London, 1941, during the Blitz. World War II is going on, and they also meet Captain Jack Harkness, who turns out he's a time agent from the future, and I think he's further into the future than the Doctor and Rose are. His spaceship, his filled with all kinds of cool technology and things. I think even the Doctor is impressed with the technology that Captain Jack has on his ship. But they discovered that this terrible plague thing, there's like this alien plague thing is happening to the people in London, where it's their faces morph, their heads morph into into the shape of a gas mask, one of those gas masks that they had during the war, and it's like the gas mask is fused into the person's face. It's like it becomes the face of the person. Very spooky, really spooky. I mean, so it's not made of rubber material. It's like it actually becomes part of the person's skull, part of the person's face, and yet the person is conscious, and this person keeps saying over and over again, "Are you my mummy? Are you my mummy?" It became a very famous line in Doctor Who. If you want to remind people of Empty Child and Dr. Dances, you should just say, "That's the story with 'Are you my mummy?'" And they go, "Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about, that story." Yeah, it's really scary. It's like if you come into contact with something, your face morphs into this gas mask, and all the person can say is, "Are you my mummy?" Or variations of "Are you my mummy?" Because I think they find a child that says, "Are you my mummy?" And then the child says something like, I'm frightened. Please let me in. Open the door. Are you my mummy? So they can say a few more things than "Are you my mummy?" But that's the main thing that keeps going through these people's heads that are affected with the plague is "Are you my mummy?" And I have to say the CGI effects on this story, where the poor victims, that their faces transform into the gas mask face, really creepy. I mean, really effective. I mean, they did it really well in this, and the fact that this is from 2005. I mean, there was good CGI back in 2005, but of course it's gotten even more advanced now. But I have to say it looks very effective. Still looks great. Still creeps me out every time I see it. When I see a victim, their head turns into the gas mask head. This is a story. It's very dramatic. It's very well written. I like the introduction of Captain Jack. I mean, John Barrowman as Captain Jack. He's quite a character. He's very happy-go-lucky, and it turns out he's very, very. It amazes me they managed to get away with this in Doctor Who, but he's obviously a very openly sexual kind of guy. I guess he likes both genders. He flirts with both sexes.
Excellent bottom.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't know how he managed to get away with it for Doctor Who. I mean, we don't ever see him in bed with anybody. They would never cross that line. But apparently he likes both genders, and he makes no secret of that he likes both genders. And yeah, he's quite a character. I mean, he is he's a tall, good-looking guy. He's got a nice, smile about him, and he's got quite a lot of personality. And I can see why John Barrowman's Captain Jack became the popular character that he became, and why they would bring him back every so often from this point onwards. I mean, yeah, he's a likable character, and John Barrowman, yeah, he's great. He's the perfect Captain Jack. So I like his supporting role in this story a lot, and we will see him again, definitely. I like the whole atmosphere of the story, and I mean, this is a very well-written story. I guess, I mean, I got to give credit where credit is due. Stephen Moffat, who would later produce Doctor Who, and he would later make some changes to the show that I personally disagree with. Some of his changes I strongly disagree with, but I have to give him his credit that as a writer, strictly as a writer, when he puts his pedal to the metal, yeah, he is a good writer, and he wrote this story, and I have to give him his credit that he wrote a terrific story. So this is one place where I will definitely tip my hat to Stephen Moffat for his writing abilities regarding this one particular story, that it's a great script. And the fact that it sustains itself for 2 full episodes, there's nothing about the story that I don't like. I mean, the excellent quality of the dialogue, the characters, the story, as the Doctor is trying to solve the mystery of this alien plague that affects people and changes their heads into gas mask heads. Eccleston, this is a great story for Eccleston. This is a terrific performance from Eccleston. One of his very best stories ever, and one of his finest performances. I mean, he's really allowed to do some great stuff in this story. A couple of bits that strike out that I remember in my head is the cliffhanger ending to the first episode, and we go into the second episode, and the Doctor and Rose. I don't remember if Captain Jack is there or not, but they're surrounded by all these victims of all these children who have been transformed by this alien plague, saying, "Are you my mummy?" And then the Doctor figures out, just tell them, "Go to your room. Go to your room. I'm very, very upset. I'm very, very cross. Go to your room." And the kids, they bow their heads, sullen, and they turn around and they leave. But I also like how Eccleston's Doctor does the detective work in this story and how he figures out this alien plague and what it's doing. And of course, I guess I also have to make mention of Florence Hoth, who plays the character of Nancy. She's a young, I guess, a teenager. Maybe she's in her late teens, and she's looking after these children who I guess don't have homes during this war, and she has to find food for them, and she's giving them shelter at this particular house. It might be an abandoned house, but she has to find food for them, like bread or something like that. And she's lost her son, as in her son has gone missing, something like that. And it's a great performance from Florence Hoth. Apparently, Florence Hoth retired from acting. She doesn't do it anymore, but she's still out there. I think she actually has a page on Twitter or something. So she's still around, but she's not acting anymore. I think she recently got married and had a kid, and she's enjoying the quiet life. So good for you, Florence Hoth. But yeah, no, she's great. She's great in this story. I think this is the performance that anybody would know Florence Hoth from, is her performance here as Nancy. And when she is finally reunited with her son, it's a great moment, and it turns out that I think it's implied in this story. Again, this is another thing that makes this story powerful. I think it's implied that Nancy was raped when she was a young girl, and that resulted in her pregnancy with her son. Because Nancy is still quite young. I think she's in her late teens when we see her, and that's just totally heartbreaking. I mean, that happened to her, but it turns out that but she rose to the challenge, and she became a wonderful mother to her son. And so when she's finally reunited with her son, and her son's face mask head changes back into his regular normal head, once the Doctor figures out what the issue is involving these aliens, these alien. I guess they look like golden fireflies. The aliens that were in the cylinder, and they resemble these bright firefly kind of aliens.
Sorry, they're called the nanogenes.
And nanogenes, yes. And anyway, to make the long story short, the Doctor figures out what the purpose is of these aliens, and apparently they came into contact when they initially crash landed on the planet. They came in contact, I think, with someone wearing the gas mask, and so it like ignited this alien plague. And so anybody who touches anybody who came in touch with this soldier with the gas mask, their face turns into a gas mask, something like that. But anyway, I have to say that very powerful moment, everybody points to this moment as one of the best moments in Doctor Who. At the end of the story, when the Doctor figures out how to fix the problem and change everybody back, and Eccleston, it's a great moment for Eccleston when he says, "Just this once, everybody lives," and I guess he unleashes the Firefly aliens, who turn out they're actually good aliens. They're not bad in any way, but he unleashes the Fireflies, and they ascend on everybody who's had their heads turned into a gas mask, and they all change back to normal. And considering how in many Doctor Who stories characters die, because not everybody who comes in contact with the Doctor lives. So for the doctor to say, just this once, everybody lives. And what do you know? Everybody does live. Everybody's cured of this alien plague. It's a great moment. It really is a great, powerful moment, and one of my favorite moments in all of Doctor Who, I have to admit. I mean, what a great what a great way to save everybody, because the Doctor really does save everybody in this story, which is wonderful. And then of course you have the finale of the story with the Doctor and Rose and Jack in the TARDIS, I guess, heading to their next adventure. And the Doctor, he dances. He dances with Rose. They put on this 1940s music, and you know that was another thing that was running through this story earlier, that the Doctor wasn't a very good dancer or something like that. But you know the 1940s music starts playing, and Eccleston starts snapping his fingers, and he starts doing some footwork, and he's like, Rose, I can dance. And so he and Rose have a dance, and you know Captain Jack watches them, and it's a wonderful way to cap off this story. I think this story is totally deserving of all the praise that it gets. It's wonderfully written and directed. Let's give credit to the director James Hawes for great direction on this. Everybody's performances in the story, from the supporting actors and the main cast, everybody in the story is wonderful. And you couldn't ask for a better ending than how this story ends. So like I said, me personally, I still like Dalek a little bit more than this two-parter, but this particular two-part story is indeed a classic. It really is that good. One of Eccleston's very best stories, no question about it. So obviously, I have to give The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances a very easy 10 out of 10.
Thanks, Alan. And yeah, The Empty Child, Doctor Dances as well. This is a great Doctor Who story. I think it's definitely one of the best of Doctor Who Series 1. And yes, it's written by Stephen Moffat, who would go on to be the showrunner when Matt Smith becomes a Doctor. I mean, the less said about Moffat, the better. But I will give him praise where praise is due. This is a very good Doctor Who story. I like the way it begins, where you have the Doctor and Rose, and you see that they're going after this container. And I do like the bit where Eccleston gets on stage and he says, okay, can anybody tell me, is anything fallen from the sky recently? And everybody starts laughing. And then he sees the poster and he realizes that it's World War II and he's in London during the Blitz. So I really like the setting here. I think the World War II setting works really well for this story. I think Christopher Eccleston is in top form here as a Doctor. He gets some really great moments and lines. I mean, he didn't get a huge amount to do in the last story because he was eaten up by the Reapers, but nonetheless, I think he's really good in this story as the Doctor. I think the pacing as well is pretty good for two parts. I mean, it's a brisk pace, it goes by pretty quickly. I have no complaints about the pace of the story for two parts. I think it's justified at being two parts. I do like the introduction of the characters here, like Captain Jack Harkness, played by John Barrowman. It's kind of a shame what happened to John Barrowman recently. I mean, he's been cancelled now because of his set on his behavior on set. Apparently, he was doing some things on set now. So I think apparently they're going to recast the character Captain Jack if he does come back in the future. But I mean, nonetheless, he's good in this story as Captain Jack Harkness. We find out that he's this time agent, and he says he tried to trick the Doctor with the canister because he thought that they were time agents, and there's nothing in there. And it's interesting how he takes a shine to Rose. Like, he says, "Oh, excellent bottom." He's got the binoculars, and he says, "Oh, hey, you got an excellent bottom too." So we find out that he's bisexual. I mean, John Barrowman in real life's gay, but I mean, nonetheless, I do like the character of Captain Jack. I think he's a good character in the story, and I do like the banter back between him and Eccleston, like that scene where they're surrounded by the gas mask zombies, and you see the Doctor, he switches the sonic screwdriver for his sonic blaster, and we see that they go through the floor, and he says, "Oh, screwdriver. Who decides? Oh, that a screwdriver needs to be a bit more sonic." And he says, "Oh, you ever had a long day? Ever had to put up a load of shelves?" I mean, that was quite funny. And he's got that line in this that he says as well. Bananas are good, and yeah, I mean the story's quite good, and they got the Glenn Miller soundtrack. The do 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 bum bum. That's quite good. And I mean, there is some sexual references in the story. Sadly, Moffat, when the doctor's talking to Rose, he says, "Oh, you go out there and you dance," which is implying that humans go out there and they fuck aliens. He says, "Oh, you dance with them," quote unquote. Um, but nonetheless, I mean, I think Rose is quite good in this story. She's got that Union Jack shirt. I mean, Billy Piper's quite cute in this one. I do think that the supporting cast here is really good. The actor who played Victor Meldrew in One Foot in the Grave, I think he appears in this story. He plays the doctor here, and we find out that he's talking. Yeah, Dr. Constantine, played by Richard Wilson. Yeah, he played Victor Meldrew in One Foot in the Grave. That's what he's probably best known for. But he's very good in here as Dr. Constantine. We see that he talks to the doctor at one point, and he says that these gas mask people, they just they sit there, they stand there, and there's that scene where you see him actually transform into a gas mask zombie. I mean, you could argue the CGI is a little bit dated now, but I still think it's pretty creepy the way like the gas mask comes out of his throat, and then it turns him into a gas mask zombie that we see that he's got that mark on his hand, so we know that he's going to become a gas mask zombie. And speaking of the gas mask child in this that keeps saying, "Are you my mummy?" I mean, it is quite creepy when you first watch this story, and I do like some of the characters in this. I do think that some of the characters in this story are really good. Like, is it yes, is it Nancy? Is that her name? Yeah, Florence Hofe as Nancy. She's very good in this, and we see that she's looking after these kids, and she sneaks into the houses when there's an air raid going on. And we see at one point that they're having chicken, and the doctor's there, and he's like, "Oh, could I have some?" And then we see that the kid's there, and he puts his hand through the letterbox, and he's saying, "Mommy," and he's making the phones ring. And we see that there's these symbols, this monkey of symbols, and it's kind of creepy how it can control things like that. And we see earlier in the story when the doctor he arrives in the TARDIS and he finds this cat, and then we see that the phone is ringing, and the doctor he's really surprised by this because the phone in the TARDIS it's not meant to ring, it's just a fake phone. So I mean that's interesting, and I do think that the story has some great lines in there. I like the moment where the guy who owns the house confronts Nancy, and he says, "The sweat of off my brow, that food is on the table. The sweat off my brow," and then she reveals essentially that that guy's having an affair with the butcher or whatever. And she says, "Oh look, there's the sweat on your brow." So that was quite funny. And I do think that she's quite a likable character, Nancy. And we see it at one point the doctor follows her, and she makes a comment about his, ears and his nose, because Eccleston's got a big nose and big ears, which was quite funny. And yeah, I mean, I think the story's got a real, dark feeling to it. And the cliffhanger's pretty intense, where they're all cornered by the gas mask zombies. And then the doctor, as Alan said, says, "Go to your room." It's funny how that manages to work out. And the doctor says, "Oh, thank God that worked. That would have been terrible last words." So Eccleston's really funny in this, and it's funny as well how Rose is dancing with Captain Jack on top of the invisible spaceship, which is tied up to Big Ben. And we see, of course, that Jack saves her at one point, because we see at the start of the story, she grabs onto this rope, which is, it turns out to be like zeppelin she's holding on to or something like that. And that was a really nice scene. I really enjoyed that. So I mean, the story itself, I think, is really good. I enjoy Empty Child, Doctor Dances, and I do like the second half of the story as well, where they're playing the Glenn Miller song, and we see the Doctor is talking to Rose, and he says, "Oh, 900 years of time and space. You don't think I've danced?" And then she's like, "Well, fine, show me your moves." And he's like, "Oh, I'm trying to resonate concrete or whatever." He's got the Sonic. So that was funny. There's a lot of like memorable lines in the story. And I do like the ending of the story where you have the revelation that Nancy, we find out she was only 16 when she had the kid, and she was saying it was her brother, but we find out, of course, it's her son. And we see that the doctor says, "Oh, go to him," and we see that the kid says, "Oh, are you my mummy?" And she says, "I am your mummy. I will always be your mummy." And we find out that the nanogenes, like they're these like tiny organisms, and we find out that they found the dead kid with the gas mask on, and it didn't, it didn't know the difference between the gas mask and the human body, and so it thought the gas mask was part of the human body. So that's why when the empty child touches somebody, they turn into these gas mask zombies, because the gas mask is fused to the skull. So I think that works very well. And there's a scene as well where Nancy's talking to a soldier, and he starts coughing, and he's got that scar on his hand, and she says, "Oh, please, just leave me alone. Just let me go." And we see the doctor says that, he's like, he's saying to the nanogenes, "Oh, come on, just, figure it out." And we find out that the nanogenes, it recognizes the mother's DNA. And I think Eccleston's acting there is just great. You can tell how ecstatic he is, because, he says to Rose, "Justice wants Rose. Everybody lives." And that's really great, because there's some Doctor Who stories in the past where the Doctor can't save anybody. I mean, if you take this story and you compare it to Horrifying Rock, I mean, that's a story where literally everybody dies apart from the Doctor and Leela. So this is kind of the polar opposite of that. I mean, it's kind of telling, though, what's going to come with the Stephen Moffat era. I mean, he has this habit of not wanting to kill off characters at all, like Clara. Like, he'll kill her off a million times and then bring her back, and the same with Rory. But I mean, for this one occasion in series one, I think it works well, and we see that the Doctor's fine. And I did like that line where the old lady says, "Oh, Doctor, when I first saw you, I only had one leg," and we find out that the nanogenes repaired her leg for her. She was missing one leg, so that was quite nice as well. And it's a really great Doctor Who story. The ending with Captain Jack is interesting, where we see that he gets rid of this bomb, and Rose is wondering what happened to Jack, and we see that he's on the ship, and we see that the bomb's about to go off. And I do like that bit at the end where the Doctor, he lands the spaceship inside Jack's spaceship, and he tells him to get in the TARDIS before it blows up. And then they have the song Glenn Miller, and Rose is about to dance with Jack. And I really like the ending where the Doctor says, "Oh, Rose, I just realized I can dance." And then he starts, showing off his moves, and he starts dancing with Rose. And that was a really nice way to end the story. We see that he finally gets his dance with Rose. So in conclusion, I think The Empty Child, Doctor Dances, it's a great Doctor Who story. It's one of the best of series one. It's not my favorite of series one, but it's definitely in my top three of series one. Definitely the top five stories of the first series of Doctor Who. And I'm going to close off by giving The Empty Child and Doctor Dances, you guessed it, a 10 out of 10. So yeah, we'll move over to Ollie now. Give us your thoughts on The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to keep it brief because I'm feeling kind of rough, to be honest, lads. I probably shouldn't. I shouldn't have done this tonight. But anyway, we're here now. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, fantastic story. I agree. It's one of the best of the series. It's definitely the scariest of the series. It's arguably one of the scariest in the new series. It's really captures kind of the essence of the show and what it should be. And the whole concept of it is really quite something. I actually think the first episode is better than the second episode, but they're both really good and they complement each other very well. Um, Obviously, this story is not without light relief, and the light relief being Captain Jack Harkness, and he's definitely a fan favorite character. And I'm glad that John Barrowman's character really holds a strong presence in this show. Certainly, Russell's era of the show, and when he meets Rose, when he saves her from when she falls in during the London Blitz, that's kind of interesting. And Rose wears a rather appropriate T-shirt in this story, which is interesting. But yeah, I think definitely the standout is Nancy, the girl who sort of looks after all the young boys. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Nancy in Oliver Twist. I don't know if that's the vibe they were going for, but it sort of has a similar sort of vibe to there. But she's a great character, and the revelation that she is actually the boy's mum is quite surprising. And I mean, it's never really stated, but there is that implication that she could have been raped. Obviously, this is a family show, so they're not going to say if that's true or not. But I think Alan's theory is pretty plausible, to be honest. But yeah, I love the ending where she confesses to everybody that she is the mum, and she says, "I am your mummy. I'll always be your mummy." And then the Nana Jeans start to work, and then the boy manages to take off his mask, which is lovely. It's a really emotional, happy ending when the doctor says, "Just this once, everybody lives." It's a brilliant moment, and it's great as a two-part story. There's a lot of tension and a lot of excitement, and there's quite a funny moment. I don't know if you guys mentioned it when the doctor, Jack, and Rose are surrounded by the gas mask people. Then he's like, "Go to your room. I mean it. I am very angry with you. Go to your room." Oh, thank God that worked. That would have been terrible last words. I thought that was quite funny. And also, yeah, Dr. Constantine, brief character, but very, very good character in the story. It's just got such a scary atmosphere, and actually, it's one of Stephen Moffat's best scripts in the entire show. That's what I mean. Stephen Moffat is a great writer when he's not running the show. But obviously, this is not about Stephen Moffat. But I just thought I'd mention that. Murray Gold's score is very good. It's very creepy and unsettling. And I like the fact that this story, there's like a race against time. Certainly in the second part, when they have to stop the bomb or the missile or whatever it is from destroying everybody, and then Captain Jack is seen riding on it at the very end. And yeah, as Jack said, Jack on this hangout said, the scene where they dance at the end is quite nice. So for every bit of darkness in the story, there is that light relief, which I think works really well. But yeah, fantastic story. This is a really chilling, very creepy Doctor Who story that really captures the essence of the show, and I think really hooked a lot of new audiences when it first aired. And I think it's definitely one of Christopher Eccleston's best stories. And at two parts, it's flawless. It's a flawless story, and it also has heart, which is what I appreciate. So I will close off by giving this a 10 out of 10. The only thing I will say is that some of the CG is quite dated, but obviously TV budget, totally understand. They don't have the money to do some of these things. Like when Rose is hanging on the rope, you can kind of tell that there's back projection and green screen. It's kind of obvious, but I will forgive them for it because it was 2005, so it was quite a while ago when it was done. But yeah, really great stuff. And yeah, I guess on to Boomtown now.
Thanks, Ollie. And yeah, I mean, if you guys want to spend a bit more time in the next two stories, that's fine because we're on here for an hour and 44 minutes. So we haven't been on that long.
Well, to be honest, I kind of want to get off because I'm not feeling well.
Yeah,
no
poor
offense,
Ollie. Yeah, we'll try to get Ollie to bed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if you want to talk about the next two stories a bit more, since we're wrapping up Eccleston's era, you know, you could spend a bit more time on it. But yeah, I mean,
I'm
all
fine, thanks. I mean, we'll like we always do. We'll talk about him at the end and you know the series like we always do. So that will add time. So hopefully that will be nice.
yeah. No, I'm just saying, yeah, no, Alan, you could spend a bit more time in the next two. That way, Ollie doesn't have to talk as much. He can, you know, but it doesn't matter anyway. Then the next story is the penultimate story of series one, and that's Boomtown. So, Alan, give us your thoughts on Boomtown, the return of the Slovene, and yeah, take it away.
It's the thing. It's the Slakeen.
Okay, Boomtown. Well, actually, it's the return of one Slovene. We get one Slovene in this one. It's the female Slovene, played by Annette Badland. Yeah, that's the actress. Although the Slovene alien in human form is known as Margaret Blaine. That's the character's name here. Yeah, Boomtown. This is a good Doctor Who story. I do like this one, but you know, when I rank all of Eccleston's stories, all 10 of them, this is the one that comes in at the bottom for me. That this is my least favorite
Oh,
of
poo.
Eccleston's era, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. It just means I like his other 9 stories a little better than this one. But this is still a good Doctor Who story all on its own. So it's in good company. It's in good company with the rest of Eccleston's era. So you know, I still like it. Um, yeah, it's the return of the Slovene. I have to say, I'm not the biggest fan of the Slovene. Although they were obviously, for me, they were a bit more annoying in the earlier story, which was a two-parter of Aliens of London and World War III,
Huh.
because they these overgrown green, these fat aliens with like baby faces, and that
Baby
whole joke.
faces.
Yeah, well, they got like baby faces, faces of babies. They really do, and that running gag of them making farting noises because hey, farting noises are funny, don't you know?
Yeah. Well, Russell's excuse was gas exchange.
Well, I mean,
hey, want to hear it again, guys? Fart noises are funny. Yeah, it's
actually,
like they run that gag into the ground in that two-parter. Fortunately, they don't do that here. So
I need to be naked.
so basically, yeah. So it seems that at the very least, one Slovene survived from that previous adventure, and that's the female Slovene. And let's see. Again, it's been a while since I've seen this story, but basically, the Doctor and Rose and Jack discover that
And Mickey.
What?
And Mickey.
Oh, Mickey. Yeah, Mickey comes on board. Yeah, Rose's boyfriend, Mickey.
Yeah, the tin dog.
Yeah,
the tin dog.
The tin dog, quote unquote. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Mickey comes back. Yeah, Rose's boyfriend, played by Noel Clark. You know, they return to Earth and they discover. Again, I'm using Wikipedia to help me here. that they notice a newspaper article showing that the female Slovene has survived because, again, in human form, she's in the form of a woman named Margaret Blaine, and she's become Cardiff's new mayor. So obviously, the Doctor and crew have to capture her, and the goal is to take her back to her home planet where she can face trial for her crimes. And they do eventually succeed in capturing her. You know, they corner her. There's a funny scene where they're chasing her and they corner her, I guess, in an alleyway or something like that. But you know, she's pleading for her life because she tells the Doctor, you know, if you take me back to my home world, I will be executed. And of course, the Doctor has no sympathy for her, you know, because of the crimes that she and her fellow Slovenes committed. Although there was one fleeting moment where I guess we'll call the Slitheen character Margaret. I mean, that is the character's name in human form, where Margaret actually showed a little. She showed a little bit of kindness, a little bit of mercy, because early on in the episode there was this really good scene where a woman who works as a interviewer has come to interview Margaret
In the
and
toilets.
hmm?
In the toilets, bizarrely.
in the toilets. Yeah, in the toilets. And Margaret is about to kill this woman, but then the woman reveals to Margaret that she's pregnant, that she's expecting, and Margaret cannot bring herself to killing the woman because she is with child, and so she lets the woman go. She lets the woman live, and so that one moment of kindness, that one moment of mercy that she showed, and she tries to use that as a defense with the doctor. That I could have killed that woman, but I let her go, and the doctor basically tells her, well, okay, so you had one fleeting moment where you were kind to somebody, but that doesn't erase all the crimes that you committed otherwise. There is indeed a very humorous scene. It is one of my favorite scenes in the show, where the doctor decides. Actually, it's Margaret who tells the doctor this, that, well, all right, if you're going to take me back to my planet, can I at least have a last meal? Isn't a condemned prisoner entitled to a last meal? Could you please take me to my favorite restaurant here on Earth? It's nearby. And the doctor says, all right, sure, why not? Yeah, I'll take you to dinner, my treat. And they're sitting at the dining table in this restaurant, and Margaret is trying to come up with ways to kill the doctor at the dining table, and the doctor keeps thwarting every single attempt she makes to kill him at the dining table. And they just carry on talking, and they carry on, I guess waiting for the meal, or because I don't think we actually see them eating together, but they order the meal, they're talking to each other. She's trying to find ways to kill the doctor. He just keeps coming up with ways to stop her as he's looking at the menu, and you have to see the scene itself to see how it plays out, but it's actually quite funny. And I do have to admit that I do like the banter between Eccleston and Annette Badland as Margaret. Annette Badland, she's a very well-known character actress in Britain. Looking her up on Wikipedia, although probably the only thing anybody in America would know her for is her appearance here on Doctor Who. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I don't know of anything else that she's done other than Doctor Who, but I'm looking at her bio. I know she's done other acting work, films, theater. She does voice acting. So
she was in EastEnders as well afterwards.
What's that?
She was also in EastEnders afterwards. I remember being in that.
Okay. Well, good for her. Yeah. So she is a very successful character actress in Britain, and I do have to admit she is quite good as Margaret Blaine. She is quite funny, and I mean, she's a very portly kind of woman, but that's okay. I mean, she is a character actress, and she's a darn good actress, and quite funny. And I do like the scenes where she gets emotional with the doctor, where she's basically pleading for him to spare her. Even though the doctor initially shows no sympathy because of all the terrible things she and her other Slitheen did. But very, very good, goody and villain rapport between the doctor and Margaret, especially that scene in the restaurant is quite funny. So that's definitely one of my favorite scenes in the story. But beyond that, the only other thing that I remember from the story is the ending, where, to make a long story short, using some kind of power that the TARDIS has, because the story more or less concludes inside the TARDIS. I think there's like a standoff between Margaret and the Doctor and his companions, but again, using some sort of power in the TARDIS, there's some kind of power in the TARDIS that reverts Margaret to a baby Slitheen, and this allows Margaret to have a second chance. And the Doctor, he obviously concludes, well, she can't be executed now. She's just a baby, so I'll take her back to her homeworld as a baby, and
Yeah.
she'll be raised by somebody, and she can have a whole new life and have a second chance.
I mean, that's all she wanted. She wanted to go home and she wanted to go back to her planet. So she was going to use the energy from the rift, and she was going to use this thing called the extrapolator to fly herself back home. But,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then she sort of was at the mercy of the Doctor, because like the dinner scene was her begging for her life, really. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's good that he gave her the chance in the end to basically start again.
Yeah,
in
literally.
a Jesus-like way. She's been reincarnated, so good
Yeah.
for her.
Yeah, literally, you give her a second chance at life and live a good life this time. And yeah, that was a very good ending. That was a very good way to end the story. Um, and overall, yeah, it is a good story. But you know, it's not a story that I remember too well, other than the scene with Margaret and the woman interviewer. The restaurant scene, of course, that's a great scene, and then of course the conclusion when she reverts into a baby.
Oh, and
Slovene.
the chase scene as well.
Yeah, the chase scene where they capture her. But the rest of the story, to me, I don't remember too well. It's a Doctor Who story that doesn't stick in my head too well, even though I certainly remember parts of it, as I think I've demonstrated in this reflection. But overall, it is a good story. I mean, I don't hate it at all. It is good. It is entertaining. Again, I mean, it's worth watching just for the dinner scene between the Doctor and Margaret. That alone is worth the price of admission, I think, to watch those two in the restaurant where they're, where the Doctor's avoiding every single attempt Margaret makes to kill him at the dinner table. It's quite funny. So it is a good story, but when I stack all of Eccleston's stories, this is the one that comes in at the bottom for me, but it is still a good story. It is in good company with the rest of Eccleston's one season era as the Doctor. So I still like it. You know, it is at the end of the day a good Doctor story, if not one of my very favorites, but it's still good. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I will give Boomtown a respectable 7 out of 10.
Thanks, Alan. And we now go over to me for Boomtown. Yeah, Boomtown. This is a very significant Doctor Who story for me because this is the first Doctor Who story that I ever saw. This is the Doctor Who story that got me into the show. Before this, I was a Star Wars fan and I never really heard of Doctor Who until my dad told me about it. And I remember watching this episode back in 2005. So what's that? Yeah, 18 years ago, nearly 20 years ago, which is mad. But yeah, this is the story that got me into Doctor Who, and I really love Boomtown. I think Boomtown's really underrated. What I appreciate about this story is that it ditches all the farting jokes from Aliens of London World War Three. I mean, it was kind of amusing the first time around, but it did get a bit tiresome. And I do like the fact that this story is a lot more of a character piece for Margaret Slovene. I think that Annette Badland, she's really good here in this story. And it's interesting to see the TARDIS team here. We've got not just the Doctor, Jack, and Rose, but Mickey. Mickey the Idiot, as he's also called, appears in the story. He's very good here. And I do think it's a fun Doctor Who story. It's interesting that it's set in Cardiff, where they actually shot the new series of Doctor Who. The new series is all shot in Wales and Cardiff, which is nice. And I do like the beginning where you see the Doctor and he's repairing the TARDIS, and you have Christopher Eccleston there as the Ninth Doctor, and you have Billy Piper as Rose, and John Barrowman as Captain Jack. And it's interesting to see how they managed to find Margaret Slovene. And I do think that Annette Badland, like I said, she's very good. It's interesting at the start of the story, she's in, she's changing from her outfit. She's in the woman's bathroom and she's about to kill this person because they know too much information. And she takes off her skin suit and then she says, "Oh, I'm married and I've got kids and all that." And you can tell that she feels bad for her and she lets her go. So it's a nice scene, and it shows that her character is capable of change. And it's interesting to see that she's the last one of her kind. And I kind of like how that sort of parallels with the Doctor in the story. Like she's the last of the Slitheen family, and the Doctor's the last of the Time Lords, even though her planet's still around and all that, but she's the last of her family because they were all killed in Aliens of London World War III. So I think the story is quite deep in a lot of ways. It's not just a bunch of fart jokes. It's not just a silly story, although it does have
About
quite.
morals.
Sorry.
It's about morals, like
Yeah.
Margaret's conscience in a way, like almost in a way, ironically being humanized, and the Doctor sort of having to decide, whether like does he have the right to sort of allow her to have a second chance. And I guess that's the story really, is does he forgive her for what she's done? I think that's the kind of heart of the story personally.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what I was getting to. It's basically the Doctor. It's sort of questioning the Doctor's judgment, like should he be the judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to Margaret? And I mean, there are amusing moments in this story. Don't get me wrong; it's not like completely dark. There are some funny and humorous moments in the story. Like, I love the whole scene where the Doctor arrives and he says, "Oh, I've had the worst day of my life" or something like that, and he looks at the newspaper and he shows it to them that she's now the mayor, and
I
we
was having
find
such a nice day.
yeah, I was having such a nice day. Yeah, it's quite funny, and he shows that she's the mayor, and then we see that of course she's got this project going on, the Blythe Droog, and he's like, "Wait, Blythe Droog, what's that?" It's Welsh for bad wolf. And I like the moment afterwards where the Doctor says, "Oh, nothing, carry on," and we'll see how that's sort of going to build up to the finale in the next story. The whole bad wolf thing's been building up throughout this. But nonetheless, I think the story's quite, funny in some ways. Like you got Mickey, and you see that Mickey's come all the way to see Rose, and there is a reference there that Mickey might want to get it on with Rose. He says to Mickey, "Oh, why don't you leave the TARDIS and I've got a hotel that you could stay in." And she's like, "Oh yeah, okay, sounds good." So, I mean, that was kind of interesting. But I mean, there is some humor in the story. Like we see when the Doctor arrives, and we see that he's like, "Oh, just tell her the Doctor's here." He's like, "The Doctor." He's like, "Just the Doctor," and then we see that we hear this sound of a teacup smashing, and then he says, "Oh." He says, "Oh, she's climbing out the window, isn't she?" And he's like, "Yes, she is." The mayor, and he's like, "Oh, leave the mayor alone," which is quite funny, and all that is just really amusing. We see that she manages to escape.
And yeah, Mickey trips over the bin.
Yeah, he gets his gets his foot stuck in a bucket or something, and he's like, "Oh, Mickey the idiot!" And I just love that whole scene, like where she's running away, and then she activates the teleport, and the Doctor just uses the sonic to bring her back, and it just keeps going back and forth, and she's like, "Oh, this is so unfair. What did I ever do to you?" He's like, "Oh, you tried to kill me and then destroy the world." And then she's like, "Oh, well, apart from that," I mean that was really funny. So this episode does have quite a bit of humor in there, and I think it works. It's not
Yeah.
to the detriment of the story. I think the humor there is just really good, and there's some great moments. Like I love that whole scene where the Doctor goes out to the restaurant with Margaret, and he's like, "Oh, steak looks nice. Okay, steak and chips." And then she says, "Oh, a female Raxacorcal Falbatorian has a poison dart within her fingernails." And then he catches it, and then she's like, "Also, as another precaution, we have gas that comes out of her mouth," and then he gets the air freshener or whatever. Like but he gets it, and he uses that. That was quite funny as well. So yeah, Eccleston gets a bit of humor in this, which I really like, and she's saying to the Doctor, "Oh, do you know what happens when they bring you back? Like they torture you and then they kill you and all this stuff." And you can tell the Doctor, you can see where the Doctor's coming from, because Margaret, she is guilty of, doing all this stuff, killing these people and using them as skin suits and trying to destroy the world and all that. But nonetheless, like you could tell that the Doctor's sort of having a bit of a moral dilemma in this story, because we see that she says, Margaret Slevine says to the Doctor, look, I let her go, this one girl, I let her go. And I really like the Doctor's speech there. It's quite a powerful line. I think what the writing there is great. He's like, so what, you just let one go, it doesn't matter, it doesn't really matter, just once in a while when the wind's in the right direction, you happen to let one go, or something like that. It's just really well done, that speech there, where he's basically just saying, okay, so you let one person go, big deal, just because the wind was in the right direction, you let it go, you let her go, you let her live. So I mean, Eccleston is just really great here. And that's
Thing
one
is,
of
though,
the
like, sorry to interrupt. There's
yeah.
that kind of like irony, because earlier in the series he nearly killed the Dalek, and then Rose managed to convince him otherwise. So I guess he's kind of thinking as well, like, his morals are constantly being tested in this series, with big decisions, and I think he's beginning to realize that everybody, there's two sides to everyone, and I think that he's kind of struggling to see if Margaret really has changed and really is worthy of redemption,
Yeah.
and if she really is just wanting to go back for a second chance. Um, so I like the conflict. I think you're right. I think it's a really well written drama in this one. Even
Yeah.
though the scene is comedic, it's also dramatic, because you feel like, what's the Doctor going to do? Like, does he have the right to appoint himself as judge, jury, and executioner? Because effectively, if the Doctor does nothing, Margaret will probably die anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, but no, it's very well, it's very good, very well written.
Yeah. And I think Russell really knew what he was doing with Eccleston's Doctor in this series, because I mean, I think the Doctor is basically trying to say to Margaret is that he's not a sociopath. Like, he only kills when he has to. She like makes a habit out of it, and the Doctor's kind of questioning her nature. He's kind of questioning if she can change her nature, because she's a Slevine, and that's sort of like part of her DNA is to be a hunter and to kill and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think the writing here is just really top notch by Russell. The fact that the Doctor is sort of put in this dilemma where, you know, I mean, if he does, bring her to her death, is he like any better than her, essentially? And that's what she's kind of saying to
Mm.
him. And I love that bit where they're in the TARDIS and Jack's there, and they're talking to each other, and she says, you're going to be responsible. She basically says to him, "You're going to be responsible for my death. Essentially, you're bringing me to my execution." And I mean, I do like the ending of the story. I think that's great. Like, we find out that she, I mean, essentially, her nature has changed, but it hasn't in a lot of ways, because we see that she grabs Rose, and you see her Slovene arm, and she gets that. Well, I guess you could call it like an interdimensional surfboard or whatever it is, and
Yeah,
she opens up the heart of the
stand back,
TARDIS.
boys. Surfs up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's good. It's a bit of a cheesy line, but nonetheless, it works. And it's interesting how she opens up the heart of the TARDIS, and how that'll play into the finale of Doctor Who series one. And we see that, she looks into the heart of the TARDIS, and then she looks at Eccleston as a doctor, and she says thank you, because she realizes that he's given her a second chance. So it's interesting how she becomes an egg at the very end of the story, and the doctor basically says, "Oh, while give her to a family who'll bring her up properly this time. Give her to someone who, is going to bring her up properly." So I mean, I do like the fact that Doctor, he didn't condemn her to death, despite her tricking him. He gave her a second chance, and now she's the Zeg again. She could start her life all over again. So that was pretty cool. And I do like the ending of the story, like where you see Cardiff's in chaos, and we see that that Rose leaves Mickey, and you see that Mickey kind of gets pissed off. He's like, "Oh, it's always the Doctor, isn't it? It's always him." And we see that Rose says, "Oh, he deserves better than me," and he kind of does, because I mean, you see in
Yeah,
series one, we see in series one that Rose, at the end of Rose, she said, "Oh, and he says, she kisses him, and he says, "Oh, what are you thanking me for?" And then she says, "Oh, exactly," which is quite a harsh thing to say. And then you'll see in series two how that sort of goes into Mickey's storyline, how he finally gets over Rose, and then we find out later on that he marries Martha. And Rose did
Yeah.
treat Rose did treat Mickey pretty much like rubbish. Like, she always put him on standby for the doctor.
Yeah.
He's always kind of like the second best.
I think there's great irony in the fact that Mickey ended up in the bin in the first episode of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Rose thinks of Mickey when she meets the doctor. I mean, she kind of thinks of Mickey as disposable, something that she can sort of kind of chuck in the
Yeah,
bin.
she likes older men, much older men.
Yeah, about 900 years older. Yeah. But
They call me a fucking cougar.
yeah, but no, yeah, I mean, I think it's a really great story, and like I said, I do like the ending where she gets a chance, Margaret Slevine, and yeah, I mean, it's a Doctor Who story that got me into the show. I mean, it's kind of funny that me and Ollie, when we got into the show, were both Slevine stories. His first one was
mine was the farting one, and yours was this one.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy both of them as well, and it's kind of a shame Slevine have never come back. I mean, it would be cool if they brought them back during
Well,
the
I think they came back in the Sarah Jane Adventures, but not in Doctor Who. I don't think.
Yeah, no, I remember them bringing them back for Sarah Jane Adventures, but yeah, I mean, it's a shame they never brought them back for like Tenancy or something like that. I think that would have been cool, but I mean, nonetheless, I think this is a really great story. And I have to thank this because without seeing this, I probably wouldn't have been a Doctor Who fan. And Eccleston's my first Doctor, and I think it's a really underrated story. I mean, it's not perfect. I wouldn't say it's a 10 out of 10, but it is a really solid story. It's a great character story. I love that drama in there. The comedy in there is just hilarious as well. And I have to thank this, for getting me into the show. And yeah, me and Ollie both started with Slevine's story, but yeah, I mean, Eccleston's great. Annette Badland's really good. John Barrowman's good as well for the scenes he is in. I mean, maybe that's one criticism I would make of the story is maybe Captain Jack could have got a bit more to do. He just doesn't really do much. But apart from that, and Rose as well. But I mean, apart from that, I think it's a really good story, great drama, also great soundtrack again by Murray Gould, and I love the prosthetics as well, the Slevine. So I'm going to close off by giving Boomtown a 10 out of 10. So
a 10, really?
Sorry, not a 10 out of 10. Sorry, I meant to say. So I'm going to close off by giving Boomtown a 9 out of 10. So
nice.
All right. Okay. Now I'll pass over to Ollie. Give us your thoughts on Boomtown.
Nice. Well, before I lose my voice, Boomtown. This is a good Doctor Who story. Very solid. I don't think it's perfect. It's not the best of the series, but I don't think it's the worst either. I agree. It is underrated, and for me, it's fun, but it's also dramatic. It's got some high drama in the dinner scene, which I really like. Like I said, and like Jack said, a lot of the story is so much about morals, and will the Doctor give Margaret her second chance, and will Margaret prove that she is worthy of redemption? And because she's going to quite extreme lengths to blow up Cardiff and use the rift just to get home. Like, her motives are perfectly justified, although she is technically a lone survivor on the run. So I guess they try to give her somewhat of a sympathetic angle, because in that scene in the toilets where she spares the life of the pregnant woman, she's like, oh, she's like, do you have a family? And she's like, no, not anymore. I'm all on my own. And you kind of feel like, yeah, wow, okay, they're going in this direction with her. They're trying to make us care about her, which I think, in a way, it does pay off. It's quite an ambitious way to write the story, but I think it's good, and it actually works because the whole dinner scene is about perspective, is about the Doctor. He isn't really much better than Margaret. He's done bad things and he's taken lives, and He's destroyed loads of worlds before. So again, that's the whole argument: is what right does he have to put himself as judge, jury, and executioner with Margaret? So I think on that basis, the story is very strong. The only weak parts of the story for me are I kind of felt Mickey's inclusion was kind of unnecessary. He travels all that way to give Rose a passport, and then they have a little bit of an argument later in this episode, and then he just leaves. He doesn't get involved in the adventure that much, other than the chase sequence, where he does like trip over the bucket, which is kind of funny. But at the same time, we're beginning to see Mickey's story kind of unravel. Like, he's a bit of a third wheel, and he's kind of being neglected by Rose, and he's starting to get fed up of Rose prioritizing the Doctor, and then Rose gets annoyed at him for starting to see someone else. And it's like, well, okay, Rose, but technically you left him, and the way you left him was very harsh. So yeah, I do think there are times when Russell doesn't realize he writes Rose in kind of a weird way. Like, unintentionally, Rose has mistreated Mickey. But anyway, this episode is great fun. Murray Gold's music is brilliant. The chase sequence makes me laugh each time. Like Jack said, the introduction where the Doctor goes up to the receptionist and all the secretary, and he's like, "Tell her the Doctor would like to see her, please." Nope, just the Doctor. And then you hear the teacup sound, and then he's like, "She's climbing out the window, isn't she?" "Yes, she is." And then it starts from there. That's really good. And again, it is more of a character piece. There's not so much action thrills, but that's why I like the story, because it is a drama, and you're supposed to understand the character's point of view, and I think that on that basis it works. And it also kind of introduces a major plot point for the rest of the show and for other spin-offs, which is the Rift. The fact that the Rift is in Cardiff, which I think is kind of ironic, because that's where they filmed the show. But yeah, so that kind of adds a bit more stakes to the story. I do agree, like, Rose is kind of sidelined as well. Like, towards the later half of the story, it's her and Mickey, and Captain Jack doesn't really do that much, which is a shame. But again, I like Margaret Sladine. I think, or Blonville Foch, as they call her, Annette Benning or Badling. I can't pronounce her surname.
Annette Badland.
Sorry?
And sorry, I was just going to say it's Annette Badland. That's her surname.
Oh, Annette Badland. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. She's very good. I like the different perspective on her character, Margaret. And I think you do feel sorry for her in some way. She lost her family, and that was technically because of the Doctor and Mickey. But yeah, she doesn't really even want revenge. She just wants to go. She just wants to get off the Earth. She kind of feels a bit like a prisoner. So I like the fact that they continued this story as a sequel to the other two-parter that we see earlier in the series, which is quite nice. And obviously, like, the Heart of the TARDIS scene sets up for the finale as well, which is nice. And the fact that the Doctor does, in the end, give her another chance, which is quite noble of him, really, considering everything that she's done. Yeah, it's a really good little drama, this one. And not everything works about it, but most things do. And I mean, the location is quite plain. It's just in Cardiff, but there's nothing really wrong with that. So yeah, I think it's a great story, and it's a great penultimate story for Christopher Eccleston as well. So I'll give Boomtown a solid 8 out of 10. I think it's a good one.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for that, Ollie. And yes, now we come to the final story in Doctor Who Series 1, the epic 2-part story that closes off the Eccleston era of Doctor Who. Yeah, sadly, he only did one series as the Doctor, but we finally come to it. Yes, the return once again of not just one Dalek this time, but multiple Daleks in Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways. So I will hand it over to Alan. What do you think of Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways?
Here I am. Thank you. All right, Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways, which sadly wound up being the final story for Christopher Eccleston. One season and done for Christopher Eccleston. And regardless of what anybody may think of, say, Colin Baker as the Sixth Doctor, at least Colin can brag he played the Doctor longer than Eccleston did. But Eccleston definitely made the most of his one season. And yeah, this is his final story, the two-parter Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways. And it's also the return of Exterminate! Talking Dalek, I got him for Christmas. How about that?
Oh, look, it's that prick.
What?
It's that prick. The Dalek.
The prick Dalek. They're back. They're back.
Oh, and
Yeah,
also the Emperor Dalek.
The Daleks are back again. The Doctor will never be able to get rid of them. They will always find a way to come back. But hey, they're the most popular of the.
Yeah, they stalk him.
They stalk him forever. But yeah, Daleks are back in a big way in this one. But yeah, this is a great Doctor Who story. This is definitely up there as one of Eccleston's very best, and he really goes out with a bang on this one. Although it's sad to see him go out. It's like, shit, he only did one season. It's like you only just arrived, Chris, and now you're already leaving? Really? Oh, man. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, this is it for Christopher Eccleston. Yeah, this is a great Doctor Who story, a terrific Doctor Who story. And Russell T Davies, showrunner, wrote this one. And a great job, Russell T Davies, writing this one and giving Eccleston such a great send-off. I also love how this is a story that also spoofs reality television shows. I mean, right off the bat, the Doctor finds himself teleported into a reality game show, like Big Brother, and there's also a hilarious spoof of the game show The Weakest Link, featuring a android. Get it? An android, modeled after the host Ann Robinson. So get it, android, yeah. And it's very funny, although it's deadly because if you give a wrong answer, the android kills you. So yeah. It's literally life or death. That's the thing about all these games that they're playing. They're playing for life or death. So the stakes are definitely high in this one.
Would you say that this story is kind of almost a reimagining of Vengeance on Varos?
In a way, yes, I'd say it is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Vengeance on Varos was an inspiration for this particular story. Whether Russell T Davies realized it or not, it might have been something at the back of his mind. That was Vengeance on Varos definitely had something to say about television and the violence on television. And here you have another story that also addresses violence on television and gives a very sick, twisted turn on reality game shows that basically they play for life or death. If you lose, you die. It's as simple as that. So you got to play to win, and if you want to save your own life.
Sorry. Also, just to interrupt there briefly, Alan. I also think this story takes a little bit of influence from Revelation of the Daleks, because in that you had Davros turning humans into Daleks, and they do that in this story as well, which is kind of interesting.
Yes, you're right. You're right about that. That's something that I'd forgotten about. Yeah, there might have been an influence there. And interesting that both of these stories came from the Colin Baker era. They might have been subconscious influences on Russell T Davies, maybe. That's possible. That's very possible. So yeah, it's a dark story, but it's dark in a good way. I like the twisting of reality game shows in this, that they're playing for life or death. And of course, eventually it is discovered that the Daleks are involved in this whole thing. Lots of Daleks, a whole lot of Daleks are in this one, lots of them. And so the stakes are very high, And yeah, it's really the high adventure. It's a very well written script by Russell T Davies. Eccleston is fantastic in his final story, and again, this is a great story for Billie Piper as Rose. Also, Captain Jack is on board for this one too, and it's a fine performance from John Barrowman as Captain Jack. They make a really good team on this one, and again, it's been a while since I've watched this one, but I just remembered that the adventure of it is very good. The Daleks don't really show up until the very end of the first episode, Bad Wolf, but then they really kick into gear with The Parting of the Ways. This is also the story that more or less ties up this whole arc that Eccleston's Doctor has been on for this whole season, involving the phrase "Bad Wolf." You may have noticed that the phrase "Bad Wolf" has been popping up every so often in various parts of the previous episodes. Like in one episode, it was spray painted onto the TARDIS, and there are other Easter eggs, if you like, in earlier episodes where the phrase "Bad Wolf" shows up. Now, I have to say though, I don't fully understand. I even mentioned this in my review of the story when I did it on my channel. I don't fully understand the thing having to do with the phrase "bad wolf." I mean, was it the Daleks who planted this as kind of like breadcrumbs for the Doctor to follow to bring him to this place where they could confront him? Were the Daleks? Did the Daleks bring about this bad wolf thing the whole time? Do either of you know? Help me.
Sorry, what were you asking there? Sorry.
Yeah, the phrase "bad wolf," which we've been seeing periodically throughout Eccleston's season, and it all culminates here. Were the Daleks responsible for the phrase "bad wolf"? Like they were kind of leaving Eccleston's Doctor breadcrumbs for him and Rose to follow through the whole season in order to bring them to this place? Are they responsible for Bad Wolf showing up every so often wherever the Doctor goes in this season?
Actually, I do remember in this story, it's not actually the Daleks who are responsible for it, because there's a bit where Eccleston, as the Ninth Doctor, says to the Emperor Dalek, "Oh, tell me one thing: Bad Wolf scattered throughout time, throughout our adventures, it was that you?" And the Emperor says, "It's not of my doing." So I'm pretty sure it's linked to Rose opening the heart of the TARDIS. When she opens the heart of the TARDIS at the end of the story, it's linked to that. So I think it's a message scattered throughout time that that links in with Rose opening up because she absorbs the heart of the TARDIS, and she says, "I take these words, Bad Wolf," and she says, "I scatter them through time." So it's to do with that. But yeah.
Okay. Having to do with the conscience that overtakes her.
Yeah.
Towards, okay. Okay. Yeah, because again, that was something that kind of went over my head in the story. Although I had always thought that a Bad Wolf, that it was some kind of code, some code word, or code word of some sort. Like, okay, bad meaning something bad is going to happen, culminating in the Daleks, and wolf. Well, wolves can be pretty ruthless, and they run really fast, and and like a bad wolf is coming. Something bad is coming. That Eccleston's Doctor and Rose are heading towards throughout the season, culminating in this final two-parter. So okay, so it may have something to do with the entity that overtakes Rose at the end of the story, I guess. But again, that was another part of the plot that was a little hazy to me. So thank you for that insight, Jack. But yeah, for 2 episodes, this is a great adventure. This is this is terrific stuff. I love the confrontation between the Doctor and the Daleks at the end of episode 1. I mean, they're only communicating through like a television screen or whatever, but he says, "I'm going to finally destroy every last stinking one of you. And Rose, I'm coming for you." That kind of thing. That is a great moment for Eccleston. And then, of course, you get the final all-out battle with the Daleks at the end. And we get... again, it's been a while since I've watched the story, although I do recall it being a terrific story. But Rose gets taken over by, I guess, by the TARDIS. Yes, I guess she absorbs like the energy in the TARDIS, or the I don't know, the all-powerful
The heart of the
entity,
TARDIS. Yeah.
the all-powerful entity in the TARDIS, and she uses it to destroy the Daleks. It's like she has like it's like she gets godlike power. She is literally like godlike with her powers. But of course, just being a mere mortal human, she can't contain it, and it will eventually kill her. I mean, even the Doctor warns her, Rose, your brain will burn, and at one point, when the Doctor rescues her from this, she says to him, my mind is killing me, and that's when the Doctor saves her. He says, Rose, I think you need a doctor, and he kisses her. And there may be a little bit of a romantic thing in there, but he's also kissing her to absorb that energy from her body,
yeah,
and take it into his own body in order to save her. But of course, by absorbing that energy means that he'll die, or i.e. he'll have to regenerate in order to save himself. But he makes that sacrifice of his 9th incarnation for her. And again, that's a great, powerful moment at the end of the story. Again, it's a great adventure. It's a great final battle with the Daleks. Although another thing that sticks out for me in this story is that there's a young lady that they meet in this story that the Doctor takes a shine to in a Doctor companion kind of way. Linda?
Yes.
That's her name? Linda, played by Jo Joyner. And it is so heartbreaking that sadly she doesn't survive. The Daleks find her and they kill her. And that's just so heartbreaking because clearly the Doctor liked her right away and he instantly wanted her to join his TARDIS crew. And she would have made a great companion. I mean, Jo Joyner, she's very likable in the role of Linda. So when the Daleks find her, oh, it's just so sad. So fucking sad. Breaks my heart too. Because she would have been a great companion had she lived. So
yeah, Linda with a Y, as she says, Linda with a Y. Also, I was going to say, Alan, there's also a nice reference to Frontier in Space. You know the scene where the Doctor thinks that Rose is being killed. He's interrogated afterwards, and the guy says to him, "You'll be taken to the lunar penal colony." So that was a nice reference, I thought, to Frontier in Space.
Yeah, that was yes. I didn't pick up on that connection before. So yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, thank you. So I also wanted to give a shout out, to Jo Joyner in the role of Linda. And again, it's heartbreaking when she gets killed because she would have made a great companion. But it just goes to show you how ruthless the Daleks really truly are, and just the sad reality that not every good person who comes in across the Doctor survives. Some do, but some don't. That's just how it is for the Doctor and how danger follows him. And sadly, not everybody makes it to the end. So that was sad. But I do think Jo Joyner was wonderful in the role of Linda. So yeah, great battle at the end, and of course that great moment when Rose gets taken over by that entity in the TARDIS, and she's just wiping out the Daleks willy-nilly. You are tiny, and I defy you, and she's just zapping them with like fire coming out of her fingers, and her eyes are glowing bright. Then her hair is like blowing in the wind. Looks like it's blowing in the wind. It's a great moment for Rose, having literally, godlike powers at her fingertips, and she's just wiping out the Daleks with the greatest of ease. And then, of course, that leads into the bit where the Doctor saves her because she can't contain the power. It'll kill her. It'll fry her brain. But the Daleks are destroyed, and the Doctor saves Rose, although it comes at a cost for him. And that leads into Christopher Eccleston's final scene as the Doctor. Where we see that his regeneration is starting, although he's trying to hold it back. And Rose had passed out, but she wakes up in the TARDIS, and she and the Doctor are, they're trying to have a happy, joking kind of conversation. But it's pretty obvious that the Doctor knows what's about to happen, that he's about to change, and he's trying to be lighthearted about it. I mean, that's the thing about the Doctor regenerating. I mean, he doesn't die per se, but this particular incarnation of him dies, quote unquote, but he gets a new body, a new face, and he keeps going. But I'm sure the Doctor was quite happy in his 9th incarnation, and maybe he wasn't in his 9th incarnation for very long, but now he has to say goodbye to his 9th incarnation and go into his 10th. So he's trying to joke around with Rose. He says, "Yeah, I'll take you to a planet where the dogs there have no noses." He's trying to joke with her. He's trying to keep it light. But then the regeneration really starts to kick in, and the Rose asks him, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And he tells her, I absorbed all the energy from the TARDIS, from you, and you're really not supposed to do that. And that leads to his farewell to Rose, and he tells her, we Time Lords have a trick we can do in order to cheat death. And I can do it, but it means I'm going to change, and I'm not going to see you again, or at least not like this, not with this silly old face. And then just before he goes, he tells Rose, Rose, I just want to say that you were fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and you know what? So was I. And he flashes that big grin, and Rose smiles at him, and then whammo, he changes. And they obviously changed the regeneration completely for the new series. That now when the Doctor regenerates, or at least this particular time, and we'll see it repeat most of the time when the Doctor regenerates from this point onwards. I don't think it really happened when the Doctor changed from Matt Smith to Peter Capaldi. That was like an instantaneous regeneration, but this time it looks like fire shooting out of the Doctor's hands, fire shooting out of his head. It's like almost like an explosive kind of regeneration. I mean, even Rose is pretty shocked about what's happening to the Doctor, but the visual effects happen. Eccleston's face slowly disappears, and the face of the new Doctor, David Tennant, materializes, and then boom, it's done. And then you've got David Tennant, the new Doctor, and he says hello, and he goes, "Oh, new teeth, interesting. Oh, that's right, Barcelona." And then he flashes that big David Tennant grin, and that's the end of the story. Because the Doctor mentioned that he would take Rose to Barcelona. So there you go. Eccleston says goodbye, and it's hello to David Tennant, and that's the end of the story. I think Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways is a fantastic Doctor Who story. Not a dull moment. A great send-off for Christopher Eccleston. I guess we'll talk a bit more at the end about Christopher Eccleston overall as the Doctor, so I'll save my comments about Eccleston for that. But it's a great send-off for Eccleston. I'm so sorry that he left so soon after only one season. Clearly, he should have done more than one season. Clearly, he was offered a contract to keep on doing Doctor Who, but he made the decision to go. Because the fact is he was only under contract for this one season because nobody knew if the new series would be a hit or not, but it turned into a smash. But Eccleston decided not to return, that one season for him was enough. So he was a great Doctor, and I will have more to say about him at the end of our discussion, but he gets a terrific send-off here. It's a great story. It's also a great Dalek story, and it's definitely one of the best stories in Eccleston's one season as the Doctor. I love it. I love Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways, and farewell, Christopher Eccleston as the 9th Doctor. And I give Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways an easy 10 out of 10.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, so Bad Wolf, Parting of the Ways. We finally say goodbye to Christopher Eccleston, and we part ways with him, pun intended. But yeah, Bad Wolf, Parting of the Ways. I absolutely love this story. I think it's actually my favorite of Eccleston's time as the Doctor. I mean, Dalek is great, but I think I slightly prefer this. I remember watching this back in 2005. I remember seeing Boomtown and then watching this, and as a 7-year-old kid watching this, I mean, this was just amazing. It really was, because I never seen the Daleks before, and to have the Dalek Emperor in this, and just as a story, I think it's such a great story, and it's such a fantastic finale to a really strong first series of Doctor Who. I mean, I think series 1 is one of my favorites of the new series, probably my second favorite series of New Who. I just think it's really great, and I think Eccleston, you couldn't have asked for a better story to send him off as a Doctor. What I really like about this story is the beginning, the way it all, we see that the Doctor and Rose arrive on Satellite 5, and the Doctor, he realizes that everything is wrong. And what's interesting is we see that the Doctor and Rose and Captain Jack, they're all split up from each other. We see the Doctor, he said that they were in the TARDIS, and then this light grabbed them. And we see that the Doctor, he's in Big Brother. He's in a reality game show, Big Brother, which is quite funny. And I do love that line where they say, "Doctor, you are now live on channel 44,000. Please do not swear. You have got to be kidding me." I mean, that's great. And Eccleston, he's just great here as a Doctor. He really is. I think Joe Joyner as well. She's really good in this as Linda with a Y. I think she would have been a great companion, if I'm being honest. And I know this might annoy some people, but I think she would have been better than Rose Tyler, because Rose is kind of a little bit bitchy and a bit egotistical. And as series one goes on, Rose can be kind of, she gets to be a bit of an annoying character when you get to series two. Series one, she's fine, but she does have her moments. And I mean, what I really like about Linda is, like, the Doctor says, "Oh, you're sweet, Linda," and he says, "Oh, come with me. From what I know about your planet, nobody votes for sweet." So I really like how the story is focusing in on reality TV and game shows and stuff. And yeah, it is kind of similar to Vengeance on Varos. I do think Russell probably took a bit of influence from Vengeance on Varos and Revelation of the Daleks. Some of the things going on, because Vengeance on Varos was about reality television and the dangers of that, and taking it too far, where literally people are getting killed off in this. I mean, you could say nowadays maybe it is a little bit dated with some of the references, like Big Brother and The Weakest Link. I mean, The Weakest Link is no longer on TV anymore, but I remember I used to watch it back in the day. I used to be a big fan of The Weakest Link, and yeah, of course there was Big Brother, which I never really watched when I was younger, but it was a big reality TV show here in the UK. But I do think Eccleston's great. We see that he destroys the camera, and they say, "Oh, Doctor, we're going to evict you," and then we see that they think that he's mad. And we see that he says, "Oh, you didn't kill me. I know that something's going on out there." And yeah, he says Linda to come with him, which is really great. So I mean, I like that, and I like the Doctor's relationship with Linda in this. Like I said, he calls her Linda with a Y. She says, "Oh, I'm Linda with a Y," which is quite funny. And they're talking about the reality show, about like that bear in a house with a bunch of people. That was quite funny. But it's interesting to see how the Doctor, how earlier in the series with the long game, how that's kind of affected the outcome of this story. Like, we find out that everybody now is just literally slaves to their TV, and half the world can't go outside because of pollution or something like that. So we see the Doctor, he's kind of his interfering kind of messed up the future here, which is interesting. And I do think the story, it is quite dark, but I think it works because of that. I think that John Barrowman here is really good as Captain Jack Harkness, and I like all the stuff with Rose in this story. Like, we see that she's on the weakest link, and she's answering all these questions, and then we see that that she's laughing, and then we see that the person gets killed, and she doesn't realize that it's literally a game show where people are going to get killed off. And we do have some great dialogue here, just some really funny lines, like where we see the android, and Rose says, "Oh, the droid," because of Anne Robinson, the presenter on The Weakest Link. So get it, android, because her name is Anne Robinson. So I mean, that was kind of funny. I thought that was interesting. And we see that the Doctor, he's trying to find out where Rose is, and he manages to find Captain Jack. And I do think the direction here by Joe Ahern, I mean, I really don't know why they didn't bring him back for any of the series, after series one, because I think Joe Ahern did a really good job here, not just directing this, but he directed quite a few stories in series one. And I think, he's a really good director. And there's a really powerful moment where Rose, she answers the questions wrong, and you got this guy. I think his name's Lance or something like that. I think that might be his name. The guy who says, "Oh, you lost," and we see that Rose is the weakest link, and she's about to get killed by the android. And it's really sad, because we see that the doctor, he manages to get to he manages to find Rose, and we see that afterwards she gets killed, and that's a really powerful moment. Eccleston's acting, I think, is great there when he sees Rose dead, and like he sees the dust on the floor, and then for some reason it always made me laugh. But the way Captain Jack says, "You killed her, your stupid freaking game show killed her," I mean, that was kind of interesting. But I mean, I do like all the stuff with Captain Jack Harkness in this, John Barrowman. I like that whole scene where he's with those like three robots earlier on, where you see that they're giving him a makeover, and they've got this like defabricator which changes his clothes. And I suppose for the ladies in the audience, and maybe some of the guys as well, it was quite nice to see John Barrowman, and you get to see him naked in this. I mean, thankfully you don't really see anything. But I did like the line afterwards where we see that they said, "Oh, we're going to give you a makeover, maybe a new head, or maybe a dog's head." And then we see that he gets this gun out, and they said, "Oh, where were you keeping that?" And he says, "Oh, you really don't want to know." And he destroys them, and we find out, of course, that he kept it up his arse, which is kind of funny. But yeah, and then he gets the gun, and he's helping the doctor. But yeah, I mean, the acting there and directing is great, where you see that Rose is presumably dead, and the doctor finds the dust of Rose. And I love Eccleston's acting there, that you can tell that he's deeply affected by the fact that Rose has been killed. And they're saying, "Oh, we will take you to the lunar penal colony where you'll be held without trial." And we see that that's a nice reference to Frontier in Space, the penal colony in that story. But I do like the bit afterwards where Eccleston says, "Let's do it," and he manages to escape from them, and he goes to find what's happening on the satellite. And we see that people who are controlling the game show, and they say, "Oh, we're just doing our job." And I think it was like Jack or the doctor who says, "Yeah, and your job is killing people on this game show, so you don't have the right to talk." And I mean, I do like some of the lines here, like where we see that they say, "Oh, that's out of bounds," and Jack says, "Do I look like an out of bounds kind of guy?" And he goes into the TARDIS. So I mean, that was kind of funny. And we also see that there's this human who's plugged in, and I guess it's a computer. They act as the computer, and they're talking about their masters. And we see that she's talking to the doctor at one point, and we see that she gets transported, and she gets exterminated by a Dalek. She gets killed, which is quite dramatic. And what I really love about the story is the Daleks are a real threat. The Daleks, I mean, they're killing people left, right, and center, and they're forced to be reckoned with in this story. And I love Eccleston's speech at the end of Bad Wolf, where we see that Rose is on board the Dalek spaceship, and the Doctor finds out that it wasn't a death ray, it was a transmat beam, and Rose was transmitted onto the Dalek spaceship. And I love the bit, where we find out, the Doctor is talking to the Daleks, and he finds out that they're there, and they've got a whole fleet now. And I love the bit where they say, "You will come and rescue Rose," and he says, "No," and they say, "What?" And he says, "I said no," and they say, "But you have no defenses, no backup, no plan." And he says, "Oh yeah, doesn't that frighten you? Doesn't that scare you to death?" And he says, "Because I'm gonna," and then he says, "No, because I'm gonna save Rose Tyler, and just to cap it off, I'm gonna wipe out every last stinking Dalek out of the sky." And that's just great. And then he says, "Rose, I'm coming to get you." And that's just such a great way to end to end Bad Wolf. And then parting of the ways, I just think is is an amazing story. Like the second half of this is great. I love the introduction to the Emperor Dalek, and I do think that they did a really good job here. Nicholas Briggs is the voice of the Emperor Dalek. Of course, we've seen the Emperor Dalek before in Evil of the Daleks. That was the last time we saw the Emperor Dalek. So it's nice. And I think the Emperor Dalek here looks better. I like the fact there's this giant Dalek and you can see the mutant inside. And the Emperor says, "Oh, I am the god of all Daleks." And we find out that he survived the Time War. And what's interesting is we find out that the Daleks in this are actually human. The Daleks are made out of humans, and I love that bit where they're in the TARDIS and they destroy the Dalek, and the Doctor comes out of the TARDIS, and he says, "Oh, nothing can destroy the TARDIS," and Jack says, "Almost." He's like, "Yeah, well, I wasn't going to tell them that, but thanks." And I just love the dialogue where the Doctor's talking to the Emperor Dalek, and he's talking to the Daleks, and he's saying, "Doesn't it just burn when you face me? You know what they call me in, the ancient Dalek homeworld, the oncoming storm." And it's just fantastic. Like when we first hear that name, the oncoming storm, because the Daleks are just so afraid of the Doctor because, not just because of the Time War, but because they fought him so many times before and have lost. And it's interesting because we see that the Doctor finds out that the humans, and they say, "Oh, that word is blasphemy," and they're like, "Do not blaspheme." And the Doctor's like, "Since when did the Daleks have a concept of blasphemy?" And then I love that line where he says, "Oh, you hate your very own existence, the stench of humanity." So it's really interesting to see how the Daleks here are made out of humans, something we've seen before in Revelation of the Daleks, but they despise mankind. And he's like, you hate your own flesh and all that. So, I mean, this is a really, it's quite a dark story, but I mean, the dialogue here is just fantastic. It's just really great. There's some really emotional moments in the story. We see that one of the characters in the story, he fancies this woman who's working with him on Satellite 5, and he says, "Oh, after this, do you want to go out and get a drink?" Or and she's like, "Oh, you asking me out on a date and all that." And it's really sad because we see, once the Daleks, they're defending themselves against the Daleks, and Jack gives that good speech where he says, "Oh, the Daleks are, coming for us." And the guy who won the game show, The Weakest Link, he just wants his money. He doesn't believe in the Daleks, and he ends up getting exterminated. And you see loads of people getting just killed off in the story, left, right, and center. So I mean, Russell, he understands what makes the Daleks scary, and we see the Daleks are just killing people left, right, and center. And it's sad when that guy, the girl he fancies, she gets killed, and then he goes nuts. He gets the gun, and he gets exterminated by a Dalek, and that's just really great stuff. Just fantastic, and of course, yeah, when you get Linda's death, that was particularly heartbreaking because we see that the Doctor's talking to Linda, and we see that she's there, and then the Daleks appear out of nowhere, and I think that's really well directed, where you just see the Daleks outside of the spaceship, and you see the lights flashing, but you don't hear them say exterminate. I mean, obviously they're saying exterminate outside, but she can't hear them, and then we see that they destroy the window and she gets killed, and the Doctor hears her getting killed off, and it's a really sad moment. And what's interesting about the story as well is that he sends Rose home. He sends Rose back to the Powell estate. We see that he says to Rose, "Oh, go into the TARDIS," and we see that the Doctor tricks Rose and he sends the TARDIS home. And watching this story, you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, is the Doctor going to die? Is the Doctor actually not going to survive this?" I mean, when I was watching this when I was 7, when it was first broadcast, I didn't know what the heck was going to happen. And I like the bit afterwards where the message is activated, and it's send a Rose, that I'm sending you back home. And he's like, "Oh, let the TARDIS die, let it, gather dust in the street corner and let it die." And then I like the bit afterwards where the hologram turns to Rose and he says, "Have a great life, Rose. Have a fantastic life." And when I first saw that, I was kind of perplexed, but I am assuming that it's the Doctor sending a message from where he is at the moment on Satellite 5. But we see that Rose goes back home, and it is kind of annoying when Rose is saying, "Oh, I want to go back to see the doctor and all that," and then she says, "What am I going to do? Eat chips, go to work, and all that." And then Mickey says, "Oh, that's what the rest of us do," and then she says, "Well, I can't do it." And then Mickey says, "Oh, does that mean you think you're better than us?" And she's like, "Oh no, I didn't say that." So kind of gets a little bit annoying when Rose is sort of bitching about not being with the doctor. But I did like the bit afterwards where Jackie, she gets this crane or whatever is a tow truck, um, to essentially help Rose open up the TARDIS, because we see that she's trying to use Mickey's car to open up the heart of the TARDIS, and then she opens up the heart of the TARDIS with this machine, this tow truck or whatever it is, uh, that Jackie borrowed from somebody. So that was nice, and we see that that Rose absorbs the heart of the TARDIS, and she goes back to Satellite 5. And I mean, you do feel kind of bad for Jackie, because she says, "Oh, the doctor did the right thing; he sent you back to me." But she realizes that Rose cares a lot for the doctor, and she doesn't want, Rose doesn't want the doctor to die. So we see that she goes to the future, and the doctor says to the Emperor, "Oh, Bad Wolf, tell me about that, scattered throughout time." And the Emperor says, "That's not of my doing." And Rose, of course, sees it when she meets Mickey again. She sees it on the street, in big letters, Bad Wolf. And so, yeah, so we see that she says, "Oh, I take this name Bad Wolf and I scatter it throughout time." And her voice sort of changes, and we see that the doctor says, "Oh, Rose, you've got the whole of the time vortex in your head, you're gonna burn." And yeah, like Alan said, that line afterwards where he says, "Oh, I think you need a doctor." I remember watching this with somebody years ago, and they said that line is pretty cheesy. And I mean, it is kind of cheesy, but nonetheless, I think it works. And the doctor kisses Rose. I mean, you could say that there is sort of like a relationship between the Ninth Doctor and Rose. But I mean, I kind of see it. I don't really see it that way. I kind of see her falling in love with the 10th Doctor more than the Ninth Doctor, because there is that age gap. I think he just did that so we could, take the time vortex out of her. And we see that, yeah, of course, the Emperor Daleks destroyed, and all the other Daleks were destroyed by Rose. And we see that Jack, he gets killed. And I do like the bit where they say exterminate, and he says, "Oh, I kind of figured that." And then he gets revived. We see that he comes back to life because of Rose. And I guess you could say Captain Jack's like Captain Scarlet. He's indestructible. I mean, later on we see when he comes back, he can't be killed, and no matter how many times you shoot him, kill him, whatever, he always comes back. But the ending of the story, I mean, sorry for waffling on, but I had a lot to say about this one. The ending of the story I think is fantastic. Where the doctor's with Rose, and he says, "Oh, I was going to take you to so many places, Barcelona, not the city Barcelona, the planet Barcelona. You're going to love it there." And he says, "Oh, they got dogs with no noses." How many times you tell that joke and it's still funny? And as a kid watching this, I was kind of shocked when the doctor regenerated, because he says, "Oh, we Time Lords have this trick. It's kind of like a way of cheating death." And he says, "Except, it means you won't see me again, not with this daft old face." And I like the last line he says to Rose. He's like, "Before I go, I just want to say you were fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And you know what? So was I." And you see Eccleston smiling. And I think that's a really great way to end Eccleston's era as the Doctor, because even though he wasn't around for the Doctor very long, he accepted his death with a smile on his face. And he knew that it wasn't the end for him completely. And I remember at the time seeing Eccleston change into Tennant, and then he says, "Oh, new teeth, that's weird. Oh, so where was I? Oh yeah, that's right, Barcelona." I remember at the time watching that and thinking, what the heck just happened to the Doctor? What the heck is going on? Because I didn't know what regeneration was, and I didn't know at that point that David Tennant was announced as the next Doctor, because I wasn't watching the news and stuff at that point, because I was like a kid. But I mean, that's just a great way to end the story. And of course, we'll get into David Tennant next time. So, yeah, I mean, Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways. I mean, sorry if I've rambled on a bit about this story, but it's a really special story for me, because, this really was a turning point. I mean, Eccleston was my first Doctor, and And then, Tennant sort of became the Doctor I grew up with. Like me and Ollie, David Tennant was the Doctor we grew up with. We started with Eccleston, but Tennant was really the Doctor that was the Doctor of our childhood. And I mean, I think Eccleston was a really great Doctor, and I think he did a great job. And I just think the story is fantastic. The soundtrack, the directing, the acting, the script by Russell T Davies, it all just comes together. And I'm going to close off by giving Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways an easy 10 out of 10. So, yeah. We'll now move on to Ollie. Give us your thoughts on Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways.
Right. I'm going to keep this brief because it's getting a bit late and I'm kind of struggling. But yeah, no, I agree, guys. Absolutely brilliant story. It's sad that Eccleston goes out with this one, but in a way, it's not sad because it's a fantastic story. And what an epic story. I'm not going to. I'm not going to repeat too much of what was just said, but I like the fact that the Daleks are back. It definitely raises the stakes, and it's a pretty epic story with the game shows and the sort of life or death reality stuff, which obviously hugely references pop culture at the time, but it works. It works for the story, and I like the fact that it really is the culmination of the Doctor almost realizing that he'd found his moral compass again, and Rose was the person that sort of helped him with that. He'd really, almost ironically, humanized, in some sense. He learned that it was better not to kill and not to be driven by rage. And it's exciting seeing the Emperor of the Daleks. We haven't seen the Emperor for a long time, so that was a fantastic confrontation. And Eccleston is perfect in his final story. He's funny, he's dramatic, and he also takes it to emotional new heights. And the regeneration is bittersweet, I've got to say. The first time in the new series where a Doctor leaves, and I like the fact that he leaves Rose with a smile on his face, and he says, "You were fantastic, and you know what? So was I." And then he changes into David Tennant, and Tennant's introduction is good. It's quite brief, but it is good. Obviously, we've got the children in need scene, the born again, which is nice. The only sort of scenes I'm not keen on are the scenes when Rose goes home and she's kind of crying over the Doctor, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just sitting here eating chips, and which it's a small niggle that I can live with because of how good the rest of it is, and the fact that Mickey decides to help her, and her mum decides to help her get back. That's true devotion right there. Considering the way Mickey was treated, that's really noble of him to do that. Donna noble of him. I love Captain Jack, and he takes on a more of a action man kind of role here, and he gets to use a lot of guns. And then when he's brought back to life, he's immortal. So yeah, he's got to learn to live with that, which is really interesting. And Billie Piper is very good as Rose, especially when she has to, she absorbs the time vortex, and the Doctor has to remove that from her. And then, oh, fuck's sake, when he says, "I think you need a doctor," and then he kisses her to suck the vortex out of her. Oh, I shouldn't have said it like that, but you know what I mean. And that's a really beautiful moment right there. And now from that point onwards, I think you can see that, okay, this is now becoming a romance, and certainly in series 2, it will take a further development when he becomes David Tennant. So yeah, that's all good. Murray Gold's music, superb as always. Joe Joyner is probably the best supporting cast member as Linda, and it is a real shame that she dies because she could have been a great companion. She really could. But I guess that was kind of the tragedy. That was to give her death a bit more impact, was the fact that the Doctor was going to take her as a companion. So yeah, it's a real shame that she died, but I thought at least the death hit hard. The CGI is actually very good for a TV budget, and you really feel the epic scope of the story. And the Daleks are pretty fierce this time, and the whole thing with the Delta Wave is kind of cool as well, and how the Doctor really has to decide whether to, kill the Daleks or let humanity suffer. So some tough choices that he has to make here, and I think that Russell wrote a really good script, or scripts plural. I think that was there was a lot of good writing here, and it's just a brilliant end to the series. It really wraps it up well, and also when Rose scatters the words across time and space, kind of tying that into the series. The Bad Wolf thing kind of explains how that keeps popping up all over the place. And I'm guessing the whole idea behind the words is the fact that it kind of was it was Rose, it was the Doctor and Rose meeting, kind of like how in series 4 you got the Doctor Donna thing, and how that connects those two characters. This was just used as a device to kind of connect Rose and the Doctor, which I thought was kind of clever in a lot of ways. And it's pretty emotional, certainly when Linda dies, and certainly when Eccleston changes. It's it's a real shame that he only had one series, but what a series it was! Magnificent series, and this is just such a good story. It really is perfect. And I also love the weakest link scenes with the Anne droid. I mean, that's such a clever idea, and I'm sure Anne Robinson was delighted when they turned her into an android, and at least the android fought in the final battle as well, which was quite nice. And in Captain Jack, there's a lot of comedy in this one when he's trying on all the outfits, and he's like, "What's the defabricator?" And then it reduces his clothes, and he's like, "Am I naked in front of millions of viewers?" Ladies, viewing figures just went up.
Oh, Ollie,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to back up what you said earlier about Captain Jack. That actually he is left behind at the end of the story,
Yes.
because I guess they will be bringing him back later, and of course he gets his own spin-off show, Torchwood. And you also brought up the fact that actually he dies in this story, but the TARDIS energy that Rose unleashes brings him back to life, and he becomes immortal. And now he has to deal with the issue of being immortal from now on. So that was something I just wanted to throw in. Yeah.
Oh
Carry
yes,
on.
thank you. Yeah, very good point. Yes, obviously they brought him back to life because they wanted to use him for the spin-off shows, and obviously he will return with David Tennant's era later down the line. And yeah, it's just ironic the fact that he's now immortal, which we don't discover until series 3. Oh, fuck. Sorry, my voice is really struggling, so I'm probably going to have to call it there. But the music by Murray Gold is also really good. And yeah, I just think it's terrific. It's an epic. So I will finish up by scoring this a definite 10 out of 10. It's probably my favorite Eccleston story. I'm probably more excited about it than I sound, but yeah, it is a spectacular finale. And this series is spectacular. And anyone who says otherwise is kidding themselves. But yeah, no, loved it. And by Christopher Eccleston, he was a great Doctor. Very underrated Doctor, but I feel like now he's getting more appreciation. He may not have been the typical choice to play the role, but I thought that he handled it really well. He had a real dramatic side, and the costume is simple, but it's reflective of his character. and the fact that we come across him as kind of an emotionally damaged Doctor, and almost Rose helps him find his heart again, or hearts plural. So in a way, he kind of learns to find his empathy and to find his sympathy again. So she kind of reforms him, which is ironic in a way because he regenerates at the end of the series. So in a way, that's kind of very beautiful when you look at it from that perspective. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen Eccleston carry on for longer, but obviously it was his decision to go, which was a shame. But he obviously didn't appreciate the running of the show, the way it was done. But he will always be remembered, and it's good that he's come back to Big Finish. So that's at least something. But anyway, I'll hand over to the host because I'm about to die. I think I need to regenerate. So yeah, after you, Jack.
Oh, thank you, Ollie. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for Series 1. I've really enjoyed doing this reflection with you guys. We are now going to do our final ranking of the season. So just sort of giving our rating and ranking of the season out of 100. So, yeah,
Oh.
I'm going to pass it over to Alan. So sort of give us your thoughts overall on Series 1, how you would rate each story out of 10 and then rank them, and then yeah, your final sort of rating out of 100 for Series 1. So take it away, Alan.
Sure. This is how I rank. Let's see. And by the way, after I do the ranking, do I get to say final words about Christopher Eccleston, or do we save that for the very end?
Yeah, I think yeah, you could say your final words about Eccleston, and then I'll hand over to Ollie. He could do the ranking. He could do his final words about Eccleston, and I'll do the same, and then we'll end the hangout. So yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, so this is how I rank Eccleston's one season era as the Doctor, 10 stories. I'll try to go quick because I know Ollie is fading. At number 10 is Boomtown, which I give 7 out of 10. Number 9 is Aliens of London and World War III, which I give 7 out of 10. Number 8 is Father's Day, which I give 8 out of 10. Number 7 is The Unquiet Dead, which I give 8 out of 10. Number 6, The Long Game, which I give 9 out of 10. Then getting into the top 5 here, number 5 is Rose, the debut story. I give Rose, the story, a 9 out of 10. Number 4 is The End of the World, which I give a perfect 10 out of 10 too. I really love that story. I think I love it more than Ollie and Jack do, but I really love that story a lot, The End of the World. So I put that one at number 4. The top 3 stories, any one of them could be number 1, but only one of them can be number 1, and I have to rank them. So at number 3 is Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways, which I give 10 out of 10. Number 2, The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, which I give a 10 out of 10. And my number 1 favorite Christopher Eccleston story, of course, is Dalek, which I give a 10 out of 10. And I just want to say, regarding Christopher Eccleston, well, you got to give Christopher Eccleston his due where it is due, because he was the Doctor that brought back Doctor Who. He was the Doctor who launched the brand new Doctor Who series after the show had been away for so many years, even though they tried to bring back Doctor Who in the late 90s with Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, but very sadly that did not go beyond the pilot TV movie. And as I've said, Paul McGann definitely would have been a fantastic Doctor if only he'd been allowed his own series, but he was a great Doctor for that one movie. But anyway, he did not get a full series. Thankfully, Christopher Eccleston did get a full series as the 9th Doctor, and the only sad thing is that he only did one season. Apparently, as I think Ollie mentioned and Jack mentioned, Eccleston apparently had some issues with the people running the show. I'm sure Russell T Davies was one of them, and the co-producers. Yeah, he didn't really like the way the show was being run. The story also goes is that he was very overworked doing this show, just doing this one season of Doctor Who. It took a lot out of him to do this one season of the show, which I think is something that Eccleston was not used to in any other acting projects or even any other TV projects. I mean, it was a lot of work for him to do this one season, and it took a lot out of him. I think he requested a little bit more time off, and the producers either couldn't or wouldn't accommodate him. That they had to stick to the work schedule that they had to stick to. He was only signed up for one season, and obviously, once the show proved to be a smash, they wanted to sign him up for another season. But Eccleston said no, that one season for him was enough because he just felt very overworked. He was very tired. Although they kept that very hush hush for many years. And for a while, Eccleston for many years he came across to me as kind of the punk doctor, the rebel doctor, and not only because he was the doctor with who wore the leather jacket and he had kind of like the shaved head and all that. Not just punk rock in the way he looked as the doctor, but just the fact that his departure at the time was very mysterious. He didn't really give any reasons why at the time that he left. He would not appear at any Doctor Who conventions for the longest time. He did not record any audio adventures as the Ninth Doctor for the longest time. And for many years I thought to myself, gee, does Eccleston is he even happy that he played the role as the Doctor? Because it seems like he's kind of ungrateful for having played the role and been on Doctor Who. He also admitted that he was not a lifelong Doctor Who fan, unlike the other actors who played the Doctor. Not that Eccleston didn't like Doctor Who, but that he just never watched it. He said that when he was young, he was usually outside playing when the show was on. But he did want to work with Russell T Davies, and that's why he agreed to play the part. But it turns out that there was more to it than that. That again, Eccleston eventually admitted that he just didn't get along well with the producers, and that he felt very overworked working on the show. And in short, that's basically why he left. But no, he's very appreciative of Doctor Who and having played the role of the Doctor. And I'm very happy to see that in recent years, he has been appearing at fan conventions. He has been recently recording audio adventures as the Ninth Doctor. And okay, I admit, I was wrong about him. He wasn't the punk Doctor that I initially thought he was, like right after he left the show. It's a shame he only did one season, but oh, what a great season it was. There are some stories in his season that I like more than others, but I think all of his stories are good. All of his stories range from good to fantastic. And he had a great one season as the Doctor, and he made the most of his one season. He really did. And as I say, he was the Doctor that launched the brand new Doctor Who series, and I give Eccleston his credit where credit is due, that he was a great Doctor. He only did one season, but what a great season, and he was and is a great Doctor. So Christopher Eccleston, I salute you. Thank you for your one great season as the Doctor. I'm glad to see you're appearing at conventions and you're recording audio adventures as the Ninth Doctor now. Good for you, man. Well done, Christopher Eccleston, and thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And now we will go on to Ollie, and we'll try and make this as quick as we can. So Ollie, you just want to give us your ranking and rating of the stories, and then just sort of your overall thoughts on Eccleston.
Well, I've kind of already talked about Eccleston, so I'll just do the ranking and ratings. Okay, so coming in at number 10 is The End of the World. I gave that 6 out of 10. 9 is The Long Game. That's 7 out of 10. 8 is Aliens of London, World War 3, 8 out of 10. 7 is Boomtown, 8 out of 10. 6 is Rose, the story, not the character, at 9 out of 10. 5 is The Unquiet Dead at 10 out of 10. 4, The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances at 10 out of 10. 3, Father's Day, 10 out of 10. 2, Dalek at 10 out of 10. And 1, Bad Wolf, Parting of the Ways, 10 out of 10. I loved Series 1. It was a really great reboot to the show. It's kind of more of a reimagining, I suppose, of the show, because it follows the same continuity. But Russell did a really good job at bringing the show back to life, and it's a shame it's Christopher Eccleston's only series, but what a series to have. The writing is really good, and it's spectacular. Spectacular drama, thrills, action, emotion. It's got it all, and it's set the bar high for the new series, which sadly I don't think was maintained for as long as we would have liked. But still, it was the start of something great, and I think that Eccleston and Russell should be very proud. And I'm sad to see Eccleston go. Really liked his Doctor, and he will forever remain as one of my favorite Doctors, and he was my first Doctor. So thanks, Chris. You are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Oh, Bo, I was going to ask you guys, did you give a score out of 100 for the series?
My score is 88 out of 100. So a damn
Ooh.
good score for Christopher Eccleston.
Mine is 89, so very close.
Okay. So, yeah, yours was 89 out of 100, Ollie, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, all right, series 1. Yeah, this is a really great series of Doctor Who. So I'm going to do the ranking now. Number 10 is The Long Game at 8 out of 10. Number 9 is The End of the World at 8 out of 10. Number 8 is Aliens in London World War 3 at 8 out of 10. Young Quiet Dead, 9 out of 10. And that's number 7. Number 6, Boomtown, 9 out of 10. 5, Rose, 10 out of 10. 4, Father's Day, 10 out of 10. 3, The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances at 10 out of 10. 2, Dalek at 10 out of 10. And 1, Babel of Parting of the Ways at 10 out of 10. So overall, out of 100, that's 92 out of 100. And yeah, I mean, as for Series 1, I think Series 1 is a great series of Doctor Who. Like Ollie, Christopher Eccleston was my first Doctor. He was the guy who got me into the show, so I'm eternally grateful for him as the Doctor, and I'm really grateful that he did Series 1, even if it was only one series. I mean, Eccleston said it before. I think he's right. It's even though he only did one series, it's good that he did it in the first place, because I think, you know, he was an excellent choice to play the Doctor. I mean, he said the reason he took the role was because Russell was writing the series and he wanted to do something for children. And you know, I think Series 1 overall as a series is a very strong series. It's definitely my second favorite season of the new series behind Series 4. But yeah, I mean, I think Eccleston, you know, he was fantastic, and you know, it's good that he's come back now to the role of Big Finish Audio, and he's at conventions now, and um I think he was really great as a Doctor. He, you know, was the guy who got me into the show, just like Ollie. And it's a shame that he didn't do more than one series, but at the same time, you know, we've got the Big Finish audios, which I haven't listened to, but I will in the future. And Maureen O'Brien actually gave a very good compliment to Eccleston recently, who played Vicky, the companion of the first Doctor. She did an audio with him, and she said that, you know, in her opinion, Eccleston's the best Doctor since William Hartnell. And I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but at the same time, I can see where she's coming from. You know, I guess you could say he's the William Hartnell of the new series, because he was the first Doctor for many people who started watching Doctor the new series. So, I mean, I will always be grateful for him, you know, and his time as the Doctor, even though he only did one series, because he was fantastic. And Series 1, I think, is fantastic as well. So, yeah, I mean, that pretty much wraps it up for the Series 1 reflection. I had a lot of fun doing this with Ollie and Alan. So is there anything you want to say, guys, before we wrap up? Or
I'll just say that it's been great doing this hangout with you guys. It's been a long time. This was many months in the making, but I'm glad our schedules finally lined up and we were able to do another Doctor Who reflection. It's always a pleasure for me to do these Doctor Who reflections with you guys, and I look forward next time to beginning our discussions of David Tennant's era. So I'm looking forward to it.
yep. Is there anything you want to say, Ollie? Or
No, I think I'm done. Thanks, guys. It's been fun. A little bit difficult for me, but fun nonetheless to talk about Series 1, Part 2. So, thank you.
okay, and thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you all next time when we do the reflection on Part 1 of Series 2. So Christmas Invasion up until the halfway point of Series 2. So See you then, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.